Chapter 2298. Enya, your little mouth is so sweet. His sudden attack seemed to have given her a great shock. She sucked in a breath of cold air and reached out to push him away. She appeared to be a little flustered and helpless. Brother Yanqing, don't do this. Enya, you're so beautiful tonight. With a smirk on his face, he reached out and rubbed that beautiful patch of skin. SSS. The exquisite sensation made him close his eyes involuntarily and lean on her body greedily. At this moment, the medicinal properties in his body were completely activated. His body temperature kept rising, burning her in an instant. She suddenly realized that the drug in the man beside her had completely taken effect. She could not help but struggle for a while before coaxing. Brother Yanqing, you're drunk. Let me send you home, okay? I don't want to go home. He hugged her impatiently and mumbled drunkenly. I want you. I only want you. While Song Enya dealt with him, she thought to herself, this medicine is really powerful. It's not like the common knockout drugs in the market. She didn't know where Jiang Qiming got it from, but when she gave it to her, she repeatedly reminded her that the medicinal properties of this medicine would take effect very quickly. If it was mixed with wine and drunk in a cup, the medicinal properties would completely take effect within a few minutes. Furthermore, it would cause people to have hazy hallucinations. It was a hallucinogenic drug. She did not expect the drug's effect to be stronger than she had imagined. Mu Yanqing's body was crooked as he kissed her face in a daze. At the same time he kept muttering, "It's so hot. It's so hot." Mu Yanqing could not withstand such a strong drug effect. Besides, he had drunk a lot of wine earlier, so he was already drunk. Now he felt even hotter. He leaned back on the sofa and could not help reaching out to buckle his necktie. He tugged at it repeatedly, as if he could only feel better after getting rid of the tie's restraints. Seeing that he was free from her, Song Enya sat up nervously. D***M man. How can he be so strong? She cursed him viciously in her heart as she lowered her head to examine her body. The straps of her neat dress had fallen off and slid down her shoulders. The hem of her dress had been ravaged by him until it was incomparably wrinkled. Just now, his ferocious movements had actually almost torn her underwear. She felt uneasy and glanced at the man beside her from the corner of her eyes. She didn't know when he had sat up, but he was staring at her with a gloomy face. His eyes were like torches, sharp and frightening. Why are you here? Song Enya was bewildered by his abrupt question. She widened her eyes in confusion and stared back at him. Brother Yanqing, what do you mean by that? Her soft and gentle greeting of Brother Yanqing actually turned his originally sharp expression into one of tenderness. It was an incomparably soft and affectionate feeling. Mu Yanqing's body swayed slightly as he shook his head. When he opened his eyes again, they were incomparably gentle. Chapter 2299. Just like when they had first met, she was like a budding flower. She looked at him shyly with her fluttering eyelashes, looking very lovable. Qingshu. Mu Yanqing smiled foolishly, his thin lips parting slightly as he murmured. With that, he leaned over and pulled the missy into his embrace. Qingxue, don't leave me. Song Enya was confused as she listened to this delirious man mumbling incoherently. She could not make out what he was saying. It seemed that he had completely lost his mind. She chuckled and said, Brother Yanqing, let me send you home. Okay? I'll go home with you. Song Enya's lips twitched again. She took a deep breath and carefully adjusted her posture to prevent him from hurting the child in her womb. Ever since that incident, she had been locked up at home by Song Zhenghua and was not allowed to go anywhere. Initially, she was determined to get rid of the child. However, for some reason she had a dream one night. She dreamed that the child was born. It was as adorable as a porcelain doll with fair skin and jade bones. It nestled in her arms and babbled, "Mommy, mommy." When she woke up from her dream, she leaned against the headboard with mixed feelings and gently caressed her belly. For some reason, her maternal instincts were awakened by this dream. Yes, this was her flesh and blood too. As a mother, she actually wanted to kill this little life. No matter how bad it was, she wanted to keep this child. After all, it was her flesh and blood. From then on, she no longer secretly dumped the food delivered by the servants into the trash can. Instead, she worked hard to nourish her body and replenish her nutrients, hoping that she could give birth to this little life healthily. Someone come in. A bodyguard walked into the private room expressionlessly. Missy, what are your orders? Is the car ready? Yes, it's ready. It's waiting at the door now. Song Inya nodded and gestured to Mu Yenqing. Carefully help him into the car. Yes. Mu Yenqing was a little heavy, and she could not lift him at all. Fortunately, she had the foresight to bring a bodyguard with her. The bodyguard helped Mu Yenqing into the car. Song Inya also got in and sat in the back seat. The car sped away from the hotel. Along the way, Mu Yenqing had completely lost his rationality. Like a starving wolf, he pounced on her body and kissed her while his other hand followed his instinct to ignite her body. No matter how chaste a woman was, she would not be able to resist the ferocious medicinal properties of this medicine, let alone a man. Song Inya could not stand his harassment any longer. She frowned and pushed his shoulder repeatedly. Brother Yenqing, don't bear with it. We'll be home soon. Mu Yenqing was pushed some distance away by her. Between their mouths, sparkling and translucent strands of silver could be seen. It was an ambiguous and beautiful sight. The whole car was filled with a heart-pounding temperature. The chauffeur heard heavy breathing coming from the back seat, and could not help sneaking a glance at the rearview mirror. However, when he glanced at the rearview mirror, he met Song Inya's sharp gaze. What's there to see? Chapter 2300. And no. Drive properly. Yes. Missy. The chauffeur knew his place. The car soon arrived at the hotel. Song Inya immediately pushed the door open and instructed the chauffeur. Keep an eye on him. Yes. As Song Inya spoke, she turned to look at Mu Yenqing meaningfully before smiling gently at him. Brother Yenqing, I'll be right back. Don't go. The only response he got was the cold sound of the door slamming shut. 5 minutes later the woman returned. However, it was not Song Inya but another woman. This woman was also wearing a long red dress. Her figure was similar to Song Inya's, and she had the same exquisite makeup. At first glance they looked very similar. After opening the car door, the woman leaned over and spoke in a soft and charming voice. Brother Yenqing, let's go home. Qingxue. Mu Yenqing continued to repeat this name as he allowed the woman to support him. They staggered into the hotel, passed through the magnificent lobby and long corridor, and entered the elevator. Pushing open the door of the hotel room, the woman helped Mu Yenqing into the room. Just as she led him to the bedroom nearby, Mu Yenqing instantly turned the tables. He held her shoulders, flipped her over, and pressed her down on the bed. The woman's breathing was a little hurried, and he was also panting heavily. Lying on top of her, he stared at her. The woman under him was charming and alluring, but in his eyes, only Meng Qingshua's charming face appeared in the end. This drug would cause people to hallucinate. He would see whoever he thought of. Qingxue. He muttered under his breath and suddenly lowered his head to kiss those soft red lips. He reached out his hand and roughly pulled off her shoulder strap. There was almost no foreplay. On this king-sized bed, he fiercely took possession of the woman under him. Qingxue. Qingxue. In the rhythm he kept repeating this name. He was intoxicated and crazy for her. In the midst of sex he wanted her and thought of the other her. His memories were overturned. Yenqing. The woman under him responded to him. Mu Yenqing lowered his head and seemed to see Meng Qingshua's shy and charming eyes. They were captivating. His lower abdomen tightened and he almost released all of it. Song Inya pushed open the door and entered the room. Standing in the living room, she could hear the man's heavy panting and the woman's coquettish moaning coming from the bedroom. The effects of the medicine had to be neutralized. But now that she was pregnant, it was naturally inconvenient. Fortunately, under the effects of the drug, this man could not recognize who he was having sex with. When he was tired, the effects of the drug had worn off, and he fell asleep. She would switch places. When Mu Yenqing woke up the next morning and saw her, he would naturally assume that she was the woman he had spent the night with. At the thought of this, she suddenly flashed a flirtatious smile. She unintentionally turned her head, only to catch sight of her pale and embarrassed face in the mirror. She suddenly felt that she looked a little pitiful. Pitiful. Lamentable. Lamentable. How could she have fallen to such a state? She actually did not hesitate to trample on herself like this, just for a status. Song Inya trembled as she touched her face. Pursing her lips, a vicious glint flashed across her eyes. What's the point of thinking about something so useless? Since things had already come to this, he should grit his teeth and take the final step. Chapter 2301. At the thought of this, she sneered and returned to her senses. She then strode into the private room. Inside the private room there was a charming scene. Mu Yanqing and another woman were entangled together. The room was filled with the light of spring, and it was a little absurd. The two were so immersed in their lovemaking that they did not notice her arrival at all. Song Inya leaned against the door and watched silently. It was so annoying. She turned around and was about to leave when the phone behind her suddenly rang, startling the woman on the bed. The woman looked up and was about to search for the source of the ringtone when she saw her. She almost let out a scream. Song Inya put a finger to her lips and shushed her, indicating for her to keep quiet. The woman was tactful and lowered her head. Song Inya swept her gaze across the floor. Her suit jacket had fallen to the ground, and the ringtone was coming from inside the jacket. She quickly walked over and took out the phone from the jacket pocket, only to see the name Qingxua on the screen. Is this his woman? She could not help but grip the phone tightly. She glanced at the woman on the bed and then turned to leave the bedroom with the phone. In the apartment, Meng Qingxua sat on the sofa in the living room, holding the phone tightly. However, no one picked up the phone even after the long beeping. The call was quickly disconnected. Why isn't he picking up? It's already so late. Could it be that he's already asleep? Meng Qingxua placed the phone on the sofa in a daze and silently glanced at her feet. It was a packed luggage bag with some simple clothes and documents inside. Other than that, there was nothing else. Everything in the apartment had already been packed. Whether it was the jewelry, the expensive car, or the clothes that he had given her, they had all been put away. The only things that she had taken away were some of the accompanying clothes and some money that she had withdrawn from his account. It was not much, but she thought that if she lived in a small city with one bedroom and one living room, it should be enough to cover her expenses for a year or two. She was pregnant, and she did not know if she could find a job to support her family with her current condition. Therefore, to be safe, she thickened her skin and withdrew a sum of money from his account. She was leaving this city, however. After walking one round around the room, she couldn't bear to leave. He was her first man. This phone call was her last hope for that man. Even if it was just one sentence. No, just 3 words, you're not allowed to leave. She would also obediently stay in this apartment, just like a guard, waiting for the day when he would come. However, the only response she got was the beeping sound of the phone not being picked up. Meng Qingxua was unwilling to give up. She picked up the phone again. She didn't care if she was scolded for being unreasonable or humiliated. She just wanted to hear his voice. Such a small request wasn't too greedy, right? Meng Qingxua nervously picked up her phone. Her fingers trembled as she found his number. However, she could not muster up the courage to press the dial button. After a long mental struggle, she finally mustered up the courage to make the call. At the same time, the screen flashed and the caller ID popped up. It was a call from Mu Yanqing. Meng Qingxua's face lit up with joy. She quickly picked up the call and put the phone to her ear. Chapter 2302. An unfamiliar woman's cold voice could be heard from the other end. Who are you? The woman's voice was arrogant and contemptuous as she questioned her coldly. Meng Qingxua was stunned. Seeing that Meng Qingxua did not reply, Song Inya became even more impatient and asked coldly, "Why aren't you saying anything? Who are you looking for when you're calling?" The phone fell to the ground with a thud. Meng Qingxua covered her trembling lips sadly as big drops of tears rolled down her cheeks. It's so late. It's already so late. Why is his phone with a woman? Is it really because he has fallen in love with someone else that he hasn't visited me for so long? What is this? I'm not his official wife. I'm just a canary that he's keeping by his side. I don't even have a basic status. What does he mean by falling in love with someone else? What kind of love is this? This unfamiliar woman called back and used her status as his official wife to interrogate me about my identity. How ironic. Could it be that he didn't even have her saved name in his phone? At this thought, Meng Qingxua was even more devastated. She felt that her feelings for him were all one-sided. She was deeply in love with this man, but now it seemed so ironic and laughable. Song Enya held the phone and vaguely heard a woman's desperate sobbing from the other end. She knew her name. Her contact number was in Mu Yanqing's phone. She took the opportunity to read through his messages earlier. No wonder Mu Yanqing kept muttering that name while hugging her. It seemed that she was one of his little lovers. Actually, she was not in the mood to care how many lovers he had. But on second thought, Mu Yanqing would be her husband in the future. Since he would be her husband, perhaps it would be a marriage without many feelings, but there were some things that she had to care about. He kept calling Qingxue when he was drunk. She must be a woman who held a lot of weight in his heart. Therefore, she should at least show her who's boss. Song Enya held the phone and said arrogantly and coldly, "Are you still there? Speak." Meng Qingxue picked up the phone again with trembling hands and asked cautiously, "Is Yanqing there? I'm looking for him." "Oh, brother Yanqing." Song Enya sneered. "Why are you looking for him?" Meng Qingxue felt as if a knife was being twisted in her heart when she heard the woman address her so intimately. She bit her lips tightly. "He's with me, but he's tired now, so he's asleep." Meng Qingxue was stunned, her eyes widening in disbelief. "Don't call me again in the future." With that, the Missy hung up the phone. He was already asleep. He was with her. Who was she to him? His woman? Or was she just one of his many lovers? However, Meng Qingxue felt particularly upset when she heard her addressing Mu Yanqing in such an intimate manner. Damn it! She must be crazy. Why did she make this call? Meng Qingxue cried out in grief. She covered her face and wailed wantonly. Song Enya's every word was like a sharp knife cutting into her heart. She felt as if her flesh and blood were about to be torn apart. It was as painful as being twisted by a knife. Her heart hurt so much. Boo! Her sobs gradually turned into heart-wrenching wails. She could not take it lying down. Chapter 2303. Even if it was just to hear his voice before she left, was that still an extravagant hope? Meng Qingxue wiped her tears fiercely, stood up abruptly, picked up her luggage and walked towards the door. But just as she reached out and touched the doorknob, she turned back and took a look at every corner of the apartment. She couldn't bear to leave. Big drops of tears rolled down her cheeks as she sobbed. Every corner of the apartment made her feel reluctant to leave. They had once made love to each other on that big bed. She had once laid her head on his lap like a spoiled child on the sofa in the living room. In the dining room, she could even vaguely see her busy cooking for him. Even now, his jacket was still hanging on the balcony. The most painful distance between them was when he wasn't by her side. But he was in her heart. No matter what she saw, it was as if she was seeing him. Meng Qingxue slid to the ground. Holding on to her last hope, Meng Qingxue bit her lip and held back her tears as she dialed the last number. No matter who picked up, she had to hear his voice. This was probably the last bit of courage she had left. From the beginning of this relationship, she had always been the passive party. She was weak and petty. When he didn't think of her, she guarded this small apartment like a person who stayed behind and waited for him to come. She didn't dare to ask for too much and was as petty as a beggar. Sometimes when she missed him, she wanted to hide under the blanket and cry silently. But in the end, she didn't dare to disturb him. When he thought of her and came here, she was overjoyed like a childish child. The petty and helpless feeling she had when she missed him was instantly swept away, and she was beaming with joy. She hoped that he would truly place her in his heart and love her, so that she wouldn't be lonely and have no home to go to. She loved him, but she was incomparably petty and lowly, as low as the dust. But in exchange for her cowardice, he didn't care. This was the first time she had mustered up her courage, but it was also the last time. Meng Qingxue held the phone tightly. She only hoped that when the call went through, she could hear his voice as usual, even if it was an impatient voice. Meng Qingxue widened her eyes. She was so nervous that she felt a little suffocated. However, just as the call connected and she was about to speak, she suddenly heard the sound of a man and a woman making love. Ha! His flirtatious voice continued to enter her ears through the receiver. There was probably nothing that could defeat a person more easily than such a voice. It was direct and brutal. She couldn't hear the woman's voice clearly, but she could hear the man's voice clearly. It was a familiar voice. It was him, it was really him on such a night, He was by another woman's side. Was it that woman just now? She purposely picked up the call so that she could hear how she was pleasuring Mu Yenqing under her. So, at this moment someone had already taken her place? He didn't need her anymore. And she was no longer needed. Hey! Meng Qingshua's lips parted as she laughed with hollow eyes. However, before this kind of laughter could be heard, salty tears had already slipped into the gap between her lips. Why did he have to use such a cruel method? He wasn't asleep, was he? He had also tacitly agreed to use this method to completely destroy her last bit of obsession, right? Chapter 2304. She abruptly threw the phone away, as if that would save her from the bone-chilling humiliation. Meng Qingxue leaned against the door and slowly fell to the floor. She bit her lower lip hard and dug her sharp fingertips into her palms. She glanced at the plane ticket on the table and, as if she had made up her mind, slowly stood up. Midnight. Song Enya sat in the living room with her arms crossed and eyes closed. Mu Yenqing's phone was quiet on the sofa. After the call just now, that woman named Qingxue seemed to be tactful and did not call him again. After a long period of passion, the bedroom gradually returned to silence. The woman put on her clothes and walked out of the room. She saw Song Enya sitting on the sofa as if she had been waiting for a long time. She licked her dry lips and walked up to her. Miss Song. Her voice was weak, with an inexplicable sense of inferiority. Song Enya opened her eyes a little and raised her head to look at her. Is it over? Yes. It's over. Where is he? He's already asleep. Since the drug had worn off, he naturally fell asleep from exhaustion. Song Enya sat up straight. The woman standing in front of her had a face that was somewhat similar to hers. However, when the makeup was washed off, the resemblance was not so obvious. She did not know how long the two had been entangled, but at this moment, the woman's face could not hide her exhaustion. Her hair was messy and one of her eyelashes was missing. Song Enya could not help feeling puzzled when she saw a cut at the corner of her lips. What's with the corner of your lips? Corner of my lips. The woman touched her upper lip in surprise and hissed in pain. I think he bit me. I didn't notice it just now. Heh. Song Enya raised a brow. She then picked up a leather bag from the sofa and took out a thick stack of money. This woman had just graduated from university and stayed in the capital after graduation. It was said that her boyfriend was in urgent need of a sum of money for his postgraduate studies, so she thought of this method to raise the money. 50,000 yuan was just a few words to Song Enya, but it was not a small sum to her. She glanced at the money before tossing it on the table. There's a total of 50,000 yuan here. Do you want to count them? No need. The woman smiled awkwardly and said, Miss Song said that it's 50,000 yuan, so it must be true. As she spoke, she reached out to take the money. Wait. Song Enya suddenly spoke up to stop him. The woman's eyes widened in surprise. She furrowed her brows and looked at her in confusion. Do you have any other orders? Song Enya suddenly asked. This is your first time, right? The woman was stunned and nodded awkwardly. Is it a safe period? Safe period? I haven't studied it before, so I don't know much about it. Song Enya smiled. She then glanced at a pill and a glass of water on the table and ordered, Take this medicine. This is. The woman was surprised. Don't worry, it's not poison. Song Enya added, It's a morning after pill. I've taken the morning after pill before. It's effective for 72 hours. What she was thinking was that it would not be good to take too much of such medicine, right? Chapter 2305. I didn't see it, so it doesn't count. The girl could not help but clench her fists tightly. This woman was more heartless than she had imagined. Sucking in a deep breath of cold air, she stared intently at the stack of cash on the table. Gritting her teeth, she picked up the glass of water, mixed it with the pill and gulped it down. When the pill slid down her throat, she put down the glass of water and pursed her lips. Miss Song, I'm done. Are you satisfied now? Yes. Taking this medicine is good for me, and it's good for you too. I think you don't want a child to appear out of nowhere. I heard that you did this behind your boyfriend's back. You should have done it cleanly, right? Yes, you're right, Miss Song. Then may I leave this place now? Song Enya nodded her head in tacit agreement. She then gestured to the money on the table and said, Take it. Thank you. The woman did not seem to feel humiliated. Just as she took the money and was about to leave, Song Enya suddenly called out to her. Wait. What's wrong now? The woman was a little annoyed, but she restrained herself. Turning around, she saw the other's cold and meaningful expression. Remember to keep your mouth shut. Only you and I know about this. If a third party finds out about this, you should know what I'm capable of, right? The last sentence was dragged out, but it sent chills down one's spine. The woman could not help but shudder. She glanced at the other's incomparably gloomy face and felt her hair stand on end. She hurriedly said, Miss Song, don't worry. I'll definitely keep this a secret. There will definitely not be a third person who knows about this matter. You'll do your best. The woman nodded hurriedly. Then she pulled her coat tightly around her, opened the door and fled the place. The door slammed shut with a bang, and the spacious suite fell into silence. Song Enya glanced coldly at the phone on the sofa and then slowly stood up. She walked to the mirror and looked at her face in it. Then she bit the corner of her lower lip hard. His strength was so great that it didn't take long for the corner of his lips to be bitten by his teeth. Wisps of blood flowed out. Narrowing her eyes, Song Enya suddenly reached out and messed up her hair with all her might. At the same time, she tore at her clothes with all her might. Her shoulder straps and skirt were all torn apart. As if to create a realistic effect, she actually ruthlessly messed up her own body. Song Enya took another look at her disheveled appearance in the mirror before walking into the bedroom with her chest held high in satisfaction. In the bedroom, the bed was a mess. Mu Yanqing was lying on the bed in a disheveled state. His tall figure took up more than half of the 3-meter-long bed. Song Enya glanced out of the window. Unknowingly, it was already past 3 o'clock. Dawn would break soon. She slowly laid down beside him, but her eyes were still open. She didn't immediately fall asleep. Since he had already come this far, he would not give up until he achieved his goal. She couldn't afford to lose. When Mu Yanqing regained consciousness, he suddenly felt a splitting headache before he even opened his eyes. His head was so painful that it felt as if it was about to explode. When he opened his eyes slightly, the nerves in his eyes twitched violently. What's going on? Chapter 2306. My head feels heavy and painful. What exactly happened? Why does my head hurt so badly? Mu Yanqing lay motionless on the bed. Even though he was already awake, he did not open his eyes immediately. His consciousness was in a state of complete paralysis. Even though he was awake, his nerves seemed to be under control. Even lifting his fingers was strenuous. What happened? He vaguely remembered that he drank a lot last night. Could it be because he was drunk? Couldn't be, right? His head had never hurt like this after a hangover in the past. What in the world had happened? Mu Yanqing tried to recall, but his mind went blank. He vaguely remembered that he seemed to have met Song Enya last night and drank 2 glasses of wine with her before he gradually lost consciousness. In his hazy state of mind, he seemed to see Meng Qingshua's gorgeous red lips struggling against his body, her eyes hazy with tears. Brother Yanqing, don't. Her aggrieved and accusatory voice kept echoing in his ears. However, he did not know if the memory was too vivid, but he actually heard that intermittent sobbing sound again. No. This is not a hallucination. Mu Yanqing opened his eyes abruptly. The moment his eyes widened, all of his senses became incomparably sharp. Hence, he could hear the sobbing sound coming from beside him even more clearly. The moment he opened his eyes, he found himself in an unfamiliar room with a huge bed and luxurious furnishings. The room was dimly lit with curtains. Woo woo woo. The sobbing sound entered his ears and became increasingly clear. Mu Yanqing sat up abruptly and turned his head in the direction of the sound. His abrupt action undoubtedly frightened the person beside him. He saw a woman in a red dress curled up at the head of the bed. When she saw that he had woken up, she let out a startled cry and hugged her body in fear as she trembled. Don't come over, I beg you. Brother Yanqing. Don't come over. Mu Yanqing was stunned by her trembling sobs for half a second before he quickly realized who this woman in front of him was. Song Enya. This realization left him completely dumbfounded. Even though the woman before him was dressed in rags, her hair was messy, and her makeup was ruined by her tears, he was able to immediately identify her from her trembling voice. Song Enya's voice was very recognizable, especially when she was crying. One would never forget it after hearing it once. Why was it her? Mu Yinqing was stunned for a few seconds. When he saw her trembling in fear and did not know what had happened, he could not help but lean toward her. Enya. Ah! Song Enya was so frightened that she retreated even further until she had shrunk into a corner. With nowhere to hide, her tears flowed even more violently and her cries became even more tragic. Brother Yinqing, don't come over. I'm scared. Please let me go. Mu Yinqing was even more stunned now. What the hell was this? Why was she crying? Also, why was she in such a sorry state on his bed? What in the world happened? After losing consciousness yesterday, he vaguely remembered that he had uncontrollably intertwined with a woman. In his memory he saw Meng Qingshua's face. What in the world happened? Why was she crying the moment he woke up? Chapter 2307. Liar. Brother Yinqing, you're a big liar. She lost control of herself when she heard this and burst into tears. Mu Yinqing was even more confused and did not know whether to laugh or cry. The more she cried, the more confused he became. However, when he lowered his head, he caught a glimpse of a bright red bloodstain in the middle of the messy bed under the blanket. He was stunned for a few seconds before he reached out and lifted the blanket, only to discover the bloodstains on the bed. Mu Yinqing thought of a frightening possibility and widened his eyes abruptly. Glaring at her, he pointed at the scattered bloodstains on the bed. Is this yours? Song Enya continued to cry and did not answer his question. However, the sorrowful and aggrieved expression on her face clearly confirmed his suspicions. D***. He was no longer a naive teenager. He would never think that these bloodstains were from a girl's menstrual period. It was not that he had never played with a virgin before. It would be ridiculous if he still could not figure out what had happened at this juncture. He lowered his head to examine himself again. He had taken off all his clothes except for a shirt and a pair of socks. His lower body was naked. He did not need to think about what had happened. It was just that. He wanted to recall the scene last night, but he could not figure out what had happened. Mu Yinqing quickly realized what had happened last night. He raised his head abruptly and looked at Song Enya tongue-tied. You! Song Enya's tears flowed even more violently and fell continuously. When she saw that he had regained his senses, her face became even more embarrassed. She covered her mouth tightly and let out intermittent sobs. Don't cry, don't cry. Mu Yinqing's head swelled as he tried to comfort her. Don't cry? What exactly happened last night? Brother Yinqing. How could you do this? Song Enya cried aggrievedly as she spoke with much difficulty. Mu Yinqing was stunned when he heard this. What should I do? Song Enya broke down and covered her face in embarrassment. This is my first time. Boom! Mu Yinqing's mind exploded with white light all of a sudden. He furrowed his brows and looked at her helplessly, feeling even more uneasy. Enya, don't cry, okay? I'm a bastard. I was drunk last night and didn't know anything. Maybe I did something bad to you, but it was unintentional. Song Enya suddenly looked up with a pale face and stared at him with teary eyes. Her lips kept trembling as she mulled over his words. Unintentional? I'm probably drunk, so I can't tell who the woman beside me is. I'm a jerk. I didn't mean to look at you. He explained through gritted teeth. What did Enya do wrong? How could Brother Yinqing do this to me? How could he do such a thing to me? What should I do? Song Enya's body trembled even more at the mention of her sore spot, and she burst into tears. Chapter 2308. Song Enya choked with sobs as she lamented bitterly. Brother Yinqing, I've always treated you as an elder brother. But you actually did such a thing to me. I shouldn't have trusted you. I shouldn't have trusted you. No matter what you said last night, I shouldn't have believed you. I should have left you at the bar and ignored you. But who asked me to be so soft-hearted? Who asked me to be so soft-hearted? When I saw you drunk like a puddle of mud and mumbling a woman's name, I couldn't bear it. My heart ached for you and I was afraid that you'd be in danger if I left you at the bar. So I kindly offered to send you home. But, at the crucial part, her tears fell even more violently. Mu Yinqing was anxious. but he forced himself to endure it and listen to her patiently. Song Enya wiped her tears and intermittently recounted what happened last night. From her account, Mu Yanqing vaguely knew what had happened last night. Last night, after parting on bad terms with Lin Shuya, he was feeling vexed. He originally wanted to go to Meng Qingshua's place, but just the thought of her gloomy face made him anxious. Hence, he made a detour to the bar and ordered a few bottles of imported wine in an attempt to relieve his frustration. However, halfway through drinking, he happened to meet Song Enya, who was also playing at the bar. Seeing him drinking alone, Song Enya offered to accompany him for a drink. Mu Yanqing was not in a daze at that time. He was still sober and somewhat conscious, but he was also in a tipsy state. Later, for some reason, after a few drinks with Song Enya, he was completely drunk. Song Enya was originally worried that he was drunk, so she wanted to call a cab to send him home. However, he was very drunk at that time and kept mumbling Meng Qingshua's name, saying that he did not want to go home and wanted to go to Meng Qingshua's place. Song Enya cried and said, "How would I know who the name you kept mumbling is? You said that you wanted to go to that woman's place, but I didn't know the address. When I asked you, you wouldn't tell me and kept mumbling that name. I really had no choice, so I thought to send you to a hotel. At least, I'll wait until you're sober." Hence, she called for a chauffeur and sent him to the hotel. Along the way, Mu Yanqing began to grope her. He hugged her while calling out Meng Qingshua's name. Song Enya endured it. She had intended to leave after sending him to his room. However, as soon as she pushed the door open, she was swept up in Mu Yanqing's arms. No matter how hard she struggled, he refused to let go. He carried her all the way to the bedroom, threw her on the bed, and made her his. Mu Yanqing was a little confused after hearing this. But what she said was true. Even though his memories of the previous night were hazy, he could still vaguely recall a woman struggling beneath him, begging for mercy, crying. The feeling of breaking through that barrier was so clear. He thought that the woman was Meng Qingxue, so he was unrestrained and had sex with her several times. It was only when he was completely exhausted that he collapsed on the bed and completely lost consciousness. At the thought of this, Mu Yanqing glanced at the bloodstains on the bed from the corner of his eye and his eyelids suddenly became heavy. Could it be? He had really done something disgraceful in a moment of carelessness. Chapter 2309. He often hung around bars. Other than when he was in a bad mood, when he was in the mood, he would hunt for women in bars with his buddies. One-night stands were common too. However, those women were easy to get rid of. Once they woke up, he would give them some money or bring them to buy some branded jewelry and bags. This time, however, the target was different. Song Enya, the daughter of the Song family, had a brother, Song Yunxi, and a father, Song Zhenghua, the capital's mayor. Her mother had some ties with the Mu family. If the target was her, it would not be easy to get rid of her, let alone offend her. He even heard that this was her first time. First time. She was still a virgin. At the thought of this, Mu Yanqing's scalp turned numb. It was a huge blow. If she was not a virgin, it would be easy to get rid of her. He originally thought that a rich missy like her would play outside often. Even if such an embarrassing thing happened, it would not be so difficult to deal with. But now Mu Yanqing's head was about to explode. Song Enya curled up in a corner and continued to cry helplessly. What should he do now? He did not know whether to comfort her or ignore her, so he could only sit there and watch her cry in a daze. Just as he was at a loss, he suddenly heard a series of hurried knocks on the door. Enya! Enya! Mu Yanqing's hearing was quite sharp. When he heard the sudden knocking, he turned his head abruptly, only to hear a woman's urgent and agitated voice outside. Enya, are you inside? Enya? Who is it? Mu Yanqing frowned, but behind him, he heard Song Enya crying even more heartbreakingly. Mom, Mom! She hugged her body, but her guilty conscience made her bury her face even lower. Mom? Is it Jiang Qimeng? How did she find this place? Could it be that Song Enya called her? This Mu Yanqing broke out in a cold sweat. At this moment, outside the door, Jiang Qimeng, who did not get any response, became increasingly nervous and kicked the door. Enya, open the door. Enya, are you there? Your mother is here. Mu Yanqing gritted his teeth. Song Enya continued to cry and did not respond. He sighed. Although he knew that he was in the wrong with his personality since he had done something stupid, he should face it. He couldn't just run away and wash his hands clean, right? Mu Yanqing suddenly got up and covered Song Enya with the blanket. After putting on his clothes, he walked to the door and opened it. Seeing the door open, Jiang Qimeng hurriedly rushed in with her men. Behind him were a few servants and bodyguards from the Song family. Jiang Qimeng rushed in hurriedly, only to see Mu Yanqing standing at the door in a disheveled state. She turned pale with fright. Yanqing? Hello, Auntie. He. He chuckled awkwardly. Why are you here? The smile on Jiang Qimeng's face faded when she saw the mess he was in. You! Song Enya's cries could be heard from the bedroom. Jiang Qimeng's lips twitched as she hurriedly went to the bedroom. Mu Yanqing leaned against the door with a headache and rubbed his temples tiredly. As expected, half a minute later, he heard Jiang Qimeng's agitated scream. Ah! Mu Yanqing, you bastard! Chapter 23:10. Jiang Qimeng's eyes reddened with anger at the sight of Song Enya's pitiful state. She rushed out of the bedroom and started hitting him. Be*****. Mu Yanqing, you be*****. What did you do to my Enya? What exactly did you do to her? How did my daughter end up in such a state? Mu Yanqing did not retaliate, nor did he give any explanation. He just let her hit him. She was, after all, a woman. How much strength could she have? Her punches landed on his body, but it did not seem to hurt much. Jiang Qimeng, on the other hand, seemed to have gone mad as she hit him, grabbed his collar and shook him. Be*****. Say something. Why aren't you saying anything? Say it. Say it. What exactly did you do to my Enya? Our Enya is still a virgin. She's not married yet. Are you a beast? How dare you do such a thing to her? How can you ruin my daughter like this? Be*****. Be*****. Auntie. Mu Yanqing could not take it anymore and reached out to grab her hand. Calm down. Calm down. Jiang Qimeng's face turned sinister when she heard that. She was so angry that she laughed. Mu Yanqing, are you a be*****? How can you ask me to calm down after such a thing happened? I'm already very calm that I didn't kill you for what you did to my daughter. Mu Yanqing, you must give me an explanation today, or else, even if I die, I'll take you down with me. Auntie, do you know the consequences of this matter? My daughter isn't married yet. If this matter gets out, our family's reputation will be ruined by you. Mu Yanqing, what exactly are your intentions to do this to Enya? Jiang Qimeng did not have the patience to listen to his explanation as she questioned him hysterically. Mom! Unknowingly, Song Enya was standing at the door. Holding her collar tightly, she bit her lower lip and looked at her with tears streaming down her face. Let's go home. Okay? I want to go home. Enya! Jiang Qimeng immediately went over to her and hugged her shoulders. Don't be afraid. I'm here. Don't cry. I'll definitely seek justice for you. Mu Yanqing furrowed his brows and looked around. The servants and bodyguards of the Song family stood beside him, forming a terrifying encirclement. They stared at him covetously, as if he was a heinous bastard. He clenched his fists and asked, Auntie, you keep saying that you want an explanation from me. Then let me ask you, what explanation do you want from me? His reply made Jiang Qimeng extremely dissatisfied. She said angrily, How dare you speak to me in such a righteous tone after doing such a disgraceful thing? Mu Yanqing, you're too much. Song Enya tugged at her mother's sleeve and stammered, Mom, Brother Yanqing didn't do it on purpose. He got drunk last night and didn't do it on purpose. Jiang Qimeng glared at her daughter in exasperation and said, Enya, I know that you've always been reasonable. However, when such a thing happened, it was definitely not something that could be brushed off with an unintentional mistake. If you're a man, you should take responsibility for your wrongdoings. Song Enya was instantly embarrassed and wanted to cry, but no tears came out. What else can I do? Don't tell me you want Brother Yanqing to marry me? Chapter 23:11. Mu Yanqing's eyes flickered with uncertainty. Marry her? How could he do that? He was going to have a marriage alliance with the Lins. Marry her. What about Lin Shuya then? Although he and that spoiled woman parted on bad terms yesterday, It did not mean that he would give up on this precious opportunity. Besides, he had always treated Song Enya as his younger sister, so how could he possibly marry her? Mu Yanqing was filled with remorse. How did this happen for no reason? Jiang Qiming was inwardly annoyed at his silence. Why is this lad so stubborn? He should have taken the initiative to say, I'm willing to marry Enya. That way, everyone would have a way out of this embarrassing situation. She could not possibly take the initiative to say, since you've done such a thing, I can only let Enya suffer a little and marry you. If she were to say that, it would seem very deliberate and shameless, as if she was hell-bent on marrying him. The Song family was, after all, a prestigious family. They could not possibly say such embarrassing things. The more she thought about it, the angrier she became. Mu Yanqing slowly said, since it has already happened, we should think of ways to make up for it. I've indeed committed a mistake and ruined Enya, but this matter has thrown me into a mess. I don't know what to do to make it up to her as much as possible. Auntie, my mind is in a mess right now. Can you let me think about it properly? Jiang Qiming was so angry that her lips trembled. She opened her mouth a few times, but no words came out of it. For a moment, she did not know how to continue the conversation. Mu Yanqing seemed to have seen through her worries and smiled bitterly. I, Mu Yanqing, may not be a hero, but I'm still an upright man. Since I've done something wrong, I'll definitely take responsibility for it, and won't run away from it. Auntie, don't worry. I'll keep my word and promise. It's good that you can say that. She gritted her teeth and said hatefully, Enya has been wronged. We can't let it go just like that. Our families have been friends for many years, so I don't want to make our families unhappy because of this matter. Since you've said so, I'll bring Enya home first. Once you've thought it through, come to the songs to look for me. Mu Yanqing nodded with a complicated expression. After the two left, Mu Yanqing let out a deep breath of cold air and walked to the shower room to take a cold shower with his clothes on. The heater was on in the suite and it was extremely hot. Coupled with the inexplicable ruckus earlier, Mu Yanqing felt that he had nowhere to vent his anger. Suddenly he raised a fist and slammed it hard against the wall. Only then did he seem to have vented his anger and walked out of the shower. She walked into the living room and saw the phone on the sofa. She picked it up and made a call, ordering the housekeeper to send another set of clothes. After hanging up the phone, he suddenly saw a missed message. It was from Meng Qingxue. An ominous premonition rose in Mu Yanqing's heart. He frowned and opened the message. Yanqing, I'm leaving. I'm determined to leave you and this city. Perhaps I'll never come back. Mu Yanqing raised his head abruptly before he could finish reading it. With a vicious look on his face, he abruptly turned around and dashed out of the door, ignoring the fact that he was drenched. Chapter 23:12. There are many memories of you in this city. I can't bear to part with them, but I have to force myself to. Mu Yanqing rushed out of the hotel. As he dialed Meng Qingshue's number continuously, he walked to the roadside and reached out to flag down a cab. The other party did not pick up the call. The beeping sound constantly disturbed his heartbeat. He had never realized that Meng Qingxue held such an important place in his heart. Sometimes people were really cheap. It was impossible to understand how important each other was until the moment of separation. At the thought of not having Meng Qingxue by his side in the world from now on, he could not help but completely lose his mind. It was not that he had never thought of breaking up with her. He had vowed to break up with her, but when it really came down to it, he actually felt reluctant and a kind of despair. It was as if the world was ending. In his mind, the memories of the two of them kept replaying like a revolving lantern. Mu Yanqing's breathing suddenly quickened. I can't let her go. The contents of the message slowly flooded into his mind. Don't look for me. Just pretend that we never met. I'll forget about you and you'll forget about me too, right? Standing on the street, he kept flagging down cars. He was in a sorry state and looked wet. None of the passing drivers were willing to drive him. After much difficulty, he finally flagged down a car. Mu Yanqing did not hesitate this time. He opened the door and got into the car. Sitting in the back seat, he ordered, "Chauffeur to Fengchen International." The chauffeur turned around and looked at him speechlessly. He was so wet that even the seat cushion was wet. When the chauffeur saw this, he frowned. "Oh dear. Sir, look at yourself. You're so wet that you've dirted my seat cushion. Mu Yanqing said. I'll pay you for the car wash. This isn't about the car wash. In our line of work, we can't afford to waste even a minute. A quarter of an hour less would mean one less business opportunity to earn money. If I wash this car, I'll lose a few hundred yuan today. Mu Yanqing furrowed his brows and rummaged through the pockets of his coat. Fortunately, his coat was not wet. He fished out a wad of cash from the hidden pocket and handed it over. There was more than 1,000 yuan in it, which should be enough for this trip. Please. I have something very important to do. If that's not enough, leave your account number and I'll transfer the money to you when I get back. Forget it. Just treat it as a favor. The driver took the cash with a resentful face and pressed the meter. He picked up his phone again and dialed Meng Qingshua's number repeatedly. However, no one came to his rescue. Mu Yanqing was on the verge of losing his mind as he kept urging the driver to speed up. Master, faster. The driver smiled helplessly. Young man, I'm already fast enough. The city is always so congested. I can't possibly run a red light, right? Moreover, there are so many speed detectors on the road. This is a commercial vehicle. If it violates the rules, it will be very troublesome. Mu Yanqing gritted his teeth and clenched his fists in anger. The chauffeur glanced at him and suddenly asked half-jokingly, You're in such a hurry. Don't tell me that you've made your wife angry and want to run away from home? Is that why you're in such a hurry to persuade her? Don't worry too much. She's running away from home. I don't think she can go anywhere other than her maiden home. Maiden home? Since when did she have a maiden home? Chapter 23:13. Apart from him, where else could she go? Where else could she go? The chauffeur, on the other hand, seemed to be enlightened. He shook his head and sighed. Young man, I've seen a lot of things like this, but I still have something to remind you. Don't care about anything else, just cherish the person in front of you. Home was only where one's wife was. Don't only learn to cherish her when you lose her. By then it'll be too late. When husband and wife quarrel, you should give in to the woman. After all, we're men. Mu Yanqing did not say a word from the beginning to the end. His face was gloomy. Half an hour later, the car arrived at Fengchen International Apartment. He was secretly annoyed. Why was the hotel so far away from the apartment? As soon as he got out of the car, he rushed into the elevator and pressed the button for his floor. When he reached his floor, he rushed out like the wind. Qingxue. He stood at the door and banged on it hard. Qingxue, open the door. It's me. Open the door. No one responded to his banging for a long time. Mu Yanqing lost his mind and raised his leg to kick the door hard. This time, the neighbor at the door was even more alarmed. Who is it? Why is there such a big commotion? The neighbor opposite opened the door and rubbed his sleepy eyes. When he saw him, he muttered unhappily, Be quiet. I'm working the night shift. Let's be considerate of each other. Mu Yanqing ignored him. When the man saw him standing at the door, he was suddenly surprised. Are you looking for Xiaomeng? Mu Yanqing turned around abruptly, his eyes bloodshot. Do you know where she went? Oh my. I saw her leaving with her luggage when I came back from work this morning. I asked her where she was going, but she didn't say much. She just said that she won't be staying here anymore. If anyone comes looking for her, just say that she's gone and is no longer here. After a pause, the man was suddenly shocked by the drastic change in Mu Yanqing's expression. Seeing his face darken, he was so frightened that he did not dare to speak. She left? Yes, the man nodded and said in a daze. I even saw her leave the key to the door in the mailbox. I don't know what's wrong with Xiaomeng. She's always smiling, but when I saw her this morning, I saw her frowning for the first time. Her eyes were red as if she had been crying. Who are you to her? Mu Yanqing furrowed his brows. He could not be bothered to reply to him. Instead, he opened the mailbox beside the door, and was shocked to see a key lying quietly beside a bottle of milk. His breathing suddenly quickened, and he slowly took out the key. However, he heard the man's nagging. Xiaomeng's health hasn't been good recently. He's very sick. A while ago, he fainted at the door because of anemia. Fortunately, I discovered it in time and sent her to the hospital. The doctor said that she didn't pay attention to her nutrition during her pregnancy, which led to anemia during pregnancy. Who are you to him? Mu Yanqing turned to look at him and muttered, I'm the child's father. Are you her husband? The man was quite surprised and stared blankly as he said, Then why do I rarely see you here? I usually see little Meng alone. That day when I sent her to the hospital, I asked her if she wanted to contact the child's father. She refused to tell me and only said that she was very busy. How busy was he? He didn't take good care of his wife when she was pregnant. Mu Yanqing could not take it anymore. He picked up the key, opened the door and entered the house. Chapter 23:14. He dialed Meng Qingshua's number again. A few seconds later, a phone rang from the sofa in the living room. Mu Yanqing was shocked. He loosened his grip on the phone and it fell to the ground with a thud. The black screen shattered. He walked over and picked up the phone from the sofa. He opened the messages and saw that there were 2 drafts. For some reason they were not sent. Mu Yanqing's heart was empty and his expression was numb for a moment. He clicked on the text message and the words jumped out. His originally empty eyes suddenly focused. Yanqing, as you wish, I've aborted the child. This way you can be at ease and pursue what you want. From now on we're done. Everything you've given me is in the apartment. I've returned what I owed you, but I don't want you to return what you owe me. I'll just treat it as a dream between us. When I wake up from the dream, it's time to leave. Mu Yanqing, if love really exists in this world, you're probably the first and last person I've ever loved. If love really exists in this world, you're the only one I've ever loved. Mu Yanqing slumped on the sofa and looked up at the ceiling in a daze. Meng Qingshua's innocent face seemed to appear in front of his eyes. That year for his birthday, she had meticulously prepared a sumptuous feast for him. After blowing out the candles together, she snuggled in his arms and asked coquettishly, Yanqing, can we be together forever? We won't be apart for the rest of our lives. He nodded absent-mindedly. Meng Qingshua was not very satisfied with this perfunctory answer. What's with them? You're patronizing me again. He smiled and scratched her nose. Okay, we'll be together forever and never be apart for the rest of our lives. She smiled. Her eyes seemed to hide countless stars, bright and moving. You'll have to keep your word. If you let me down, what will happen if I let you down? He asked. She snorted and said, If you let me down, I won't want you anymore. I'll leave you and go to a place where you won't be able to find me. I'll never see you again. This willful answer made him burst out laughing. So heartless? Yes. Meng Qingshua nodded heavily. He hugged her and said gently, Little liar, you can't leave me. Why? If you leave me, where can you go? In this lifetime, you can only stay by my side forever. After a pause, he added, You need me. When Meng Qingshua heard this, she was a little unwilling. She raised her head and asked carefully, Then do you need me? She asked stubbornly. Will you be sad without me? Mu Yanqing covered his face with his trembling hands. His face was expressionless, but the tears that dripped from between his fingers silently betrayed him. Tick-tock. Her tears fell onto the screen and she fainted. Yes. He needed her. Airport waiting room. Meng Qingshua sat in her seat, holding a photo in her hand. She kept rubbing it, but she couldn't stop her tears. Drop by drop they fell on the photo, smudging a corner. That was the only photo they took, and it was taken in the mall. It was a selfie. She pestered him relentlessly before he agreed to go into the small studio with her and take that one photo. Chapter 23:15. She gripped the corner of the photo tightly and cried pitifully. Dear passengers flying from the capital to Haining, please take note that your flight CA0003 is about to take off. Please bring your belongings, present your boarding pass, and prepare to board the plane at Gate 3. We wish you a pleasant journey. Thank you. Meng Qingshua bit her lower lip hard when she heard the boarding announcement. Reluctantly, she stood up and walked to the dustbin. With tears in her eyes, she pretended to throw the photos into the bin. She turned around, dragged her luggage, and walked toward the boarding gate like a zombie. At the Song residence, when Jiang Qiming and Song Enya returned, both mother and daughter had different expressions on their faces. The two walked into the bedroom and closed the door. Song Enya turned around and asked worriedly, Mom? What's wrong? Jiang Qiming looked at her with concern and suddenly asked worriedly, Did the plan go smoothly last night? Yes. Did you do a clean job? He didn't find out anything fishy about you, did he? Song Inya nodded. He did as you said. He was unconscious after taking the medicine yesterday. In addition, he drank so much that he was already unconscious. Even if there were any mistakes, he wouldn't have found out. Jiang Qiming nodded. Just as she was relieved, Song Inya asked helplessly, "But will Mu Yanqing marry me?" "That might not be the case now. But if you're pregnant with his child, it'll be different. When the time is right, tell him that you're pregnant with his child. Then it won't be up to him to decide on the marriage. If it really doesn't work, you can take it to the muse. He won't be in the right." Jiang Qiming smiled smugly. "Don't worry. Just wait patiently and Mu Yanqing will marry you as the young mistress of the Mu family." Song Enya interrupted her anxiously. "But Mom, I'm already 6 weeks pregnant. Although the child in my stomach is Mu Yanqing's, it's already a month old. What if we can't hide it then?" "So what?" Jiang Qiming did not think much of it. "When the child is full term, just say that it's premature. Besides, by then you'll be married. It's not important how this child came about. What's important is that this child is Mu Yanqing's. It has his blood and it's your child. That's enough." Song Enya still had some concerns and hesitated to speak. Jiang Qiming walked to her side and sat down. Patting her shoulder gently, she comforted her. "What else are you worried about? Tell me." Chapter 23:16. Jiang Qiming smiled and said earnestly, "Even if he doesn't become the head of the family, he's still a good choice to marry into." After a pause, she continued, "Think about it. Although he's a concubine's son, the Mu family is so big, and there are so many concubines' children. Why did Mu Linfeng choose him? This proved that the man, who was able to make a name for himself in such a dangerous place despite looking like a nobody, must be quite capable. It's just that with Yaja around, no matter how outstanding Mu Yanqing is, he's only a foil and his halo is overshadowed. Mu Yanqing is still capable. Even if he doesn't become the head of the family, as long as he steps through the door of the Mu family, he'll grant you glory and wealth." Song Inya nodded lightly when she heard that. "My silly lass, don't worry. Just do as I say and don't think too much about anything else. I naturally hope that you'll lead a good life and won't harbor any thoughts of harming you." Hearing her mother's words, Song Enya's last bit of worry was relieved. She climbed into bed and covered herself with the blanket. When Jiang Qiming saw this, she hurriedly rolled up the blanket for her. "Sleep for a while. You must be exhausted from last night, right?" "Yes, I didn't sleep last night." "Quickly rest then." With that, she walked to the window and drew the curtains for her before leaving the room. Song Inya lay in bed and let her imagination run wild for a while. Soon she could not resist the sleepiness and fell asleep. The Maldives was warm all year round. As it was located near the equator, the climate here was tropical. Although it was an island country, it did not have a tropical oceanic climate, but a tropical rainforest climate. The biggest characteristic of a tropical rainforest climate was that it was rainy and hot. The Maldives only had summer, and the other 3 seasons did not appear at all. However, the summer here was not that hot, and the temperature was maintained at about 30 degrees Celsius. Therefore, after it rained, it would be cooler. The annual rainfall in the Maldives was 1,900 millimeters, and the island in the rain had a different charm. At this moment, Yun Shirshir and Muyaja were enjoying a sweet vacation on another island. However, at that time, Gongjia had to take care of his 2 children, and he was having a hard time. In Yu Yu's words, he had to get used to the life of a stay-at-home dad in advance. Early morning, Gongjia had a nightmare. Half awake, he saw a huge mountain falling from the sky and pressing him down. While he was in a daze, he could clearly feel something heavy pressing down on his body. It was wriggling from time to time. Unable to bear the pressure, he was jolted awake from his dream. When he opened his eyes, he saw Yu Yu's enlarged face right in front of him. She blinked at him and giggled. "Uncle, you're finally awake." Gongjia's lips twitched. His vacation. What a disaster. He did not know if it was a good or bad thing to bring these 2 little lads along. The good thing was that these 2 little guys were by his side. When he brought them to play on the island, no annoying women came up to talk to him. It was not that he did not like women. It was just that he did not like women he was not interested in. However, the bad thing was, Chapter 23:17. Uncle, I'm so hungry. How long are you going to sleep for before you bring us to eat something nice? Xiaoqian lay limply on the edge of the bed and grumbled pitifully. It turned out that he wanted him to bring them to look for food. Gong Jia covered his face helplessly. The veins on his forehead were bulging. Please. What time was it? Moreover, the hotel had prepared food. They could go straight to the restaurant. Yu glared at him as if she had guessed what he was thinking. She said expressionlessly, Uncle, this hotel doesn't provide Chinese food. What time is it? Yu reminded him. It's already 10:30. Hurry up and get up. Bring us to look for food. Yu threw a pillow at his face. Gong Jia didn't even have the strength to push the pillow away. Why did he feel like he was an eagle? Early in the morning, Yu and Xiaoqian were like two little eagles, surrounding him and asking him to look for food. In his imagination he would hold hands with Yun Shishir, walk on the beach and play in the sea. But now it was gone forever. Gong Jia furrowed his brows as he lay on the bed listlessly. Yesterday, after he finally managed to get the two little guys to sleep, he was in a rare mood. He went to the bar on the island and drank a few glasses of imported wine. When he returned to the hotel, he slept until now. He could hold his liquor, but after drinking, he would sleep for a long time. In addition, he was jet-lagged recently. Therefore, he was sleepy and lethargic. It was hard to take care of children, especially these two energetic little guys. They seemed to have endless energy. After playing with them for an entire day, he was so tired that he almost collapsed. He wanted to cry but had no tears. Gong Jia began to consider if he should just leave the two lads on this island and escape from this place. If he did that, he would be hunted down by his sister with a rolling pin. Gong Jia shuddered at the thought of that. Just as he was feeling melancholy, wow! Xiaoqian, come and take a look. Just as he was struggling to open his eyes, Yu, who was lying on top of him, summoned Xiaoqian as if she had discovered a new continent. Xiaoqian crawled onto the bed and leaned over. What? What is it? Look at Uncle's. Wow, it's so big. Where? Wow. Really? It's huge. Gong Jia was confused. He hugged his pillow and couldn't see where Yu was looking at. However, the next second, he felt a pair of small hands pulling down his boxers. A certain part of his body was exposed and he heard Yu exclaim in surprise. Wow! Amazing! Xiaoqian said enviously. Uncle's is very big too. Is it as big as Daddy? That sounds about right. Anyway, it's bigger than mine. Uncle's is so firm. Gong Jia finally understood what the two little guys were studying while lying on top of him. Just as he was about to sit up, Xiaoqian happened to sit on his chest and pushed him back down. Yu, do you think we can be like Daddy and Uncle when we grow up? Yu said airily. How would I know? Chapter 23:18. Xiaoqian also touched it out of curiosity. It's hot. Two hooligans. Gong Jia's face burned with anger. He gritted his teeth and said, You two idiots, get off of me. Xiaoqian turned around and covered his mouth with an irritating expression. He snickered and said, Uncle, it's so early in the morning, but you seem to be very energetic. Gong Jia's face burned even hotter. He clenched his fists tightly and resisted the urge to hit him. He said, Get off of me. Uncle is angry. Yu snickered and obediently pulled up Gong Jia's pants. He patted him gently with his little hands and said comfortingly, Okay. We won't study it anymore. We're just curious. Gong Jia was speechless. Little brat. He deserved a beating. Xiaoqian didn't get off the bed. Instead, he leaned back and lay on Gong Jia's body. He stretched out his limbs and said contentedly, Lying on Uncle's body is so comfortable. Yu chuckled when he saw this. Then he pounced on Xiaoqian. Gong Jia felt as if he was being pressed down by a jack. He was about to be flattened. The three of them were stacked on top of each other like a human pyramid. Xiaoqian was on top of Gong Jia while Yu was on top of Xiaoqian. The two little guys were playing around on top of Gong Jia. Gong Jia was about to cry. Sister, save me. It was already past 11 o'clock when he finally managed to get rid of the two little guys. After Gong Jia's outburst, Yu and Xiaoichen learned their lesson and promised repeatedly that they wouldn't mess with him anymore. Gongjie threatened. If you continue to mess around, I'll throw the two of you into the sea. Yu said confidently, Uncle, you're murdering your own nephews. So what? Gongjie stood with his arms crossed and raised his eyebrows coldly. Yu said evilly, but we're not afraid. If Mommy finds out, she'll definitely throw you into the sea too. Gongjie. He even knew how to threaten others. Forget it. He didn't want to lower himself to the level of these two little things. Therefore, after tidying up, Gongjie took the two little guys to look for food. On this island, there was a very famous underwater restaurant called Itha Undersea Restaurant, which meant pearl in the local language. The restaurant was located 6 meters below sea level. The exterior was made of transparent plexiglass, and the walls and roof were made of water-resistant and transparent acrylic materials. Under the warm seawater, the restaurant was surrounded by colorful coral reefs. Various marine life shuttled back and forth between the coral reefs. Dining in such a restaurant under the sea was romantic and sentimental. However, the restaurant wasn't big. It could only accommodate 12 people at the same time. Moreover, it only provided lunch and dinner from 11 p.m. to midnight. Reservations were required 2 weeks in advance. However, Gongjie naturally didn't need to make a reservation. There was always a seat in the restaurant reserved for him. After passing through the wooden walkway and walking down a few steps, they saw 6 tables. Each table could only seat 2 adults. Gongjie and the 2 little guys were just right. As soon as they entered the restaurant, Yu and Xiaoichen were attracted by the unique style of the restaurant. They sat at the table and didn't have the mood to order food. Instead, they leaned against the glass and looked at the tropical fish swimming around outside. It was so interesting. Chapter 23:19. It was indeed very interesting to enjoy the colorful underwater world while eating. The restaurant was expensive to build, so it was not cheap to eat in it. A filet mignon cost $200. Gongjie saw them leaning against the glass and called out to them a few times, but they ignored him. He had no choice but to order steak and a snack platter for them. At the side, little Chen began to study the restaurant seriously. Yu, the water pressure in the sea is so high. Do you think the glass will break after a while? No. Although this restaurant is not built in the deep sea, the turbulence in the sea is still very strong. However, the designer must have considered this problem when building this restaurant. Therefore, the materials used must be strong and resistant to water pressure. Xiaoichen nodded as if he understood. He looked at Yu with a pair of starry eyes. You know a lot. Did you learn all this from reading books? Please, this is common knowledge. Investing in a restaurant like this underwater must have taken into account many risks. Gongjie was speechless. It was said that children were lively and had endless energy. They were curious about everything. It was true. Yu was not like this in the past. In the past, he had interacted with him on the internet. He gave off a mature vibe. It was a kind of composure that was hard to come by even for an adult. However, it seemed that after spending so much time with Xiaoichen, he had been influenced by Xiaoichen. Most of the time, he was still the mature and sensible Yu. He was gentle but cunning. He was as elegant as a little gentleman. However, at times he was like a little devil. Occasionally, he would show the naivety and even childishness of a child. At that moment, the restaurant was full. 2 tables were occupied by blonde Europeans. Judging from their facial features, they seemed to be of Dutch descent. Another table was occupied by a customer who spoke with a strong British accent. The other 2 tables were occupied by Asians. It was unknown which country they were from. It was the peak tourist season. Many countries were on holiday. Some people took the opportunity to fly to the Maldives for a vacation. There were also some who chose the Maldives for their honeymoon. They looked in the direction of Yu and Xiaoichen in surprise. The 2 little guys were mischievous, cute, and silly. Their tender little faces attracted a lot of attention. Looking at Gongjie, who was sitting at the side, she naturally assumed that the twins were his sons. Such a young stay-at-home dad. The most important thing was that he looked so sexy. His silver hair, which contrasted with his snow-white skin. Although the Europeans appreciated wheat-colored skin, they were also attracted by his handsome appearance. One of them, a blonde woman with blue eyes, pointed at Gong Jia and exclaimed to her companions in surprise. The other woman, however, smiled and said, "You look so handsome. He's so perfect for silver hair." Chapter 23:20. Unfortunately, Iftis not married dithing Kaifalin love number. Gadirekrazi. You know Icontrasist a handsomen. The conversation between the two women fell into Yu Yu's ears. He turned around, glanced at them and snickered. Shaoichen noticed his strange expression and asked curiously, "What's wrong? Do you see the two women at the table over there?" Yu Yu pointed. Shaoichen looked in the direction he was pointing and coincidentally met the gazes of the two women. The two blonde women greeted him in a friendly manner. "Hi. Hi." Shaoichen shyly retracted his head. He wasn't fluent in English and only knew the basics. However, Yu Yu was different. Just now, he had heard every single word of the conversation between the women. They were secretly talking about Uncle just now. Yu Yu snickered. Gong Jia looked up and raised his eyebrows in confusion. "What's wrong? Uncle, didn't you hear them? They were talking about you just now." "Oh." Gong Jia casually flipped through the magazine on the table, but he didn't seem to care. "What did they say?" "They thought that we were your sons. They even said that if you weren't married, they would have taken the initiative and started a romantic relationship on this island." Shaoichen opened his mouth in shock. "Wow, so bold." Yu Yu imitated the extremely affectionate expressions of the women from just now and said, "You know, I can't resist handsome men." After he finished speaking, he sized up Gong Jia's handsome face. "Uncle, I didn't expect you to attract so many women." Gong Jia retorted expressionlessly, "If being handsome and sexy is a sin, then I can't be forgiven." Cough cough. Shaoichen made a lively expression to reflect his narcissism. Gong Jia glared at him. "Isn't this the truth?" Shaoichen said truthfully, "Uncle, men should be more reserved and not be too narcissistic. Look at me, I'm so cute at such a young age. Do I talk about it as often as you do? I'm low-key, so I don't talk about it." Gong Jia was speechless. Shameless. He admitted defeat. Yu Yu glanced coldly at the two of them and his lips twitched. Shameless. Yu Yu smiled and said, "Uncle, don't think I don't know that you're using Shaoichen and me as a shield. But that's strange. Don't you look forward to a beautiful encounter on the island? A romantic encounter in the Maldives sounds great." In the 2 days since they arrived on the island, every time they appeared in bars or crowded places with Gong Jia, they could feel the hot gazes of the blonde, blue-eyed women with hot figures shooting at Gong Jia. Chapter 23:21. This abnormal reaction had once made him doubt his uncle's sexual orientation. He remembered one time when a sexy woman had mustered the courage to approach him. Gong Jia had immediately hugged the two little lads in his arms and replied in fluent English, "Sorry, I'm married." Shaoichen did not understand. Yu Yu, however, understood. He was using them as a shield. As they joked around, the waiter served the dishes. Just as he placed the steak and some snacks on the table, the waiter conjured a red rose out of thin air and presented it to Gong Jia as if by magic. Gong Jia raised his eyebrows in confusion. The waiter bent over like a gentleman and pointed to the seat where the blonde woman had been sitting. He replied politely, "Honorable sir, this rose is a gift from the lady sitting at table 3. I hope you enjoy your meal." After he finished speaking, he left leisurely. Gong Jia, however, coldly placed the roses aside. Yu Yu said, "Uncle, you're too cold. The lady appreciates you. Aren't you going to do anything?" Gong Jia replied, "I'm not interested in women." Shaoichen choked on his fruit juice. He widened his eyes in surprise as if he had seen an alien. Yu Yu glanced at the rose and then looked at Gong Jia's cold expression. He said quietly, "Uncle, your reaction is very suspicious. I'm starting to wonder if you like men." Cough. This time it was Gong Jia's turn to choke. He coughed lightly and took a napkin from the side to wipe his lips. He glared at him coldly. "Your uncle's sexual orientation is very normal. But you clearly said that you're not interested in women. I don't like women with big breasts. I don't like women with big butts either." Yu Yu said, "Most men like women with big breasts." "Oh, is that so?" Gong Jia smiled arrogantly. "That's why I'm not a typical man." Yu suddenly asked evilly. Oh, is it because you like Brother Huajin more than women? Gong Jie's face froze. He looked up with a cold gaze. Get lost. He touched a sore spot. Even now, he still felt uncomfortable when he recalled the situation that night. I saw Uncle's ears turn red when he kissed Brother Huajin that night. He's obviously shy. The little lad's words were full of surprises though. Get lost. Gong Jie warned him with his gaze. If a person's gaze was truly lethal, the boy before him would have long been frozen into a popsicle. At the side, little Li Chen's gossipy soul was instantly ignited. Uncle kissed Brother Huajin? Yeah, it's mouth to mouth. Xiao Chen widened his eyes and exclaimed, when did this happen? Why didn't I know about it? Yu said, that night New Year's Eve. You went to bed early and we were playing cards. The loser had to be punished. After that, Gong Jie and Brother Huajin lost, so Daddy pranked them. After he said that, he didn't forget to tease Gong Jie. That night, Uncle kissed Brother Huajin a few times. Lips to lips, even your ears turned red. Gong Jie gritted his teeth. Shut up. Yu laughed. Uncle, don't be shy. I'm very open-minded. I've never discriminated against gay people. Chapter 23-22. Gong Jie said angrily, I'll repeat myself. I don't like men. He raised his voice slightly. Everyone in the restaurant stopped what they were doing and stopped talking. They were attracted by his angry declaration and looked over. Even the waiter at the bar looked over in a daze, and his hands paused in their movements. The air froze. Gong Jie looked around coldly with an unfriendly gaze. Everyone was intimidated by this gaze and turned their heads away awkwardly, not wanting to look any further. Yu tried to hold back her laughter and coaxed. All right. I know. I won't tease you anymore. Humph. All right. I know I was wrong. Don't be angry, Uncle. Yu quickly coaxed him. After all, they were still counting on Gong Jie to make ends meet for the remaining few days on the island. If the joke went overboard, their uncle would really get angry. In a fit of anger, he would leave them on the island. It was too scary. Xiao Chen was also a fence-sitter. He immediately stood on Gong Jie's side and accused, Yu, don't go overboard with your joke. Uncle obviously likes women. Yu glanced at him from the corner of her eyes. Humph, Muichen, you've grown up. You even know how to rebel now. After the three of them finished their lunch, Gong Jie took the two little guys for a walk by the beach. At this time, many people were lying on deck chairs by the beach, enjoying the sun. Gong Jie's naturally powerful aura, coupled with his devastatingly handsome face, became a mesmerizing sight as he walked along the beach. Under the bright sun, his skin was shockingly fair. His skin was so perfect that not a single pore could be seen. He was shockingly handsome. His delicate skin was hard to hide even though he was wearing a simple t-shirt and beach shorts. Under the sun, his silver hair was dazzling and exuded a sense of abstinence. His skin was naturally snow-white. In the past, he had tried to deliberately tan his skin. It was effective but not obvious. Moreover, once he stopped, his skin would turn white very quickly. Gong Jie was a person who paid attention to his appearance. His original hair color was black, but his facial features were more feminine. He had a classical charm unique to the East. His eyebrows were picturesque, his lips were red, his teeth were white, his skin was smooth, his nose was high, and his eyelashes were long and thick. At first glance, his gaze was deep and melancholy, as if he had put on thick eyeliner. It could be said that his appearance, but it was not a particularly tough style. He and Yun Shishir were twins, so their facial features were very similar. Therefore, with black hair and such facial features, it was hard to avoid looking too feminine and beautiful. Fortunately, he was tall. Thus, when he was 16, he dyed his hair silver white. Once his black hair was dyed silver white, the feminine aura on his body was instantly gone. Instead, it was replaced by an extraordinary aura. Since then, he had maintained the habit of dyeing his hair. Along the way, many women came to strike up a conversation with him. Many European women were deeply infatuated with his handsome face at first sight. However, they often took the initiative to strike up a conversation, but none of them succeeded. Gong Jia always looked straight ahead and ignored them as if they were air. There was no other reason. Chapter 23-23. If it weren't for those annoying flirting, perhaps this would have been a perfect vacation. In the Maldives, the sun shone brightly, and it was like spring all year round. With such a warm climate, even if one were to lie on a deck chair and do nothing, it would still be extremely comfortable to quietly enjoy the sun. Many tall coconut trees and palm trees were planted by the sea. The stones were piled up and stacked in different styles. On the shore, the sea was crystal clear with a breathtaking light blue color. The beautiful coral reefs were clearly visible. Blue sky and white clouds, a gentle breeze. Stepping on the soft sand was extremely comfortable. The scenery was as beautiful as a painting. The reason why Gong Jia bought an island here was to make it convenient for him to come here for a vacation. Usually there was a lot of work in the hurricane group. He was originally in charge of all the affairs in the European market. However, some time ago, after he took over half of the affairs in the African market, the pressure was overwhelming. The flames of war in Africa were incessant and frequent, and orders were increasing day by day. He flew all over the world. Every day when he woke up, he was either flying in the sky or floating on the sea. Because of the advantage of freight, orders for arms were often transported by cargo ships. Generally speaking, there were many ways to transport arms. Cargo planes, large trucks, cargo ships. However, cargo planes did not carry a lot of cargo, and the passage of cargo planes was often very cumbersome. Cargo ships could carry a lot of cargo, and there were ports all over the world. Therefore, he often sailed on the sea for many years. He still remembered one time, when he led a cargo ship through the Indian Ocean, they encountered a group of pirates and engaged in a fierce exchange of fire. This group of pirates had a lot of people. They were the pirates of the Indian Ocean. They were notorious for committing all kinds of crimes. When they encountered a cargo ship passing by, they would forcibly stop it, board the ship, rob, and indiscriminately kill the innocent. Many cargo ships encountered this group of bandits, but most of them were useless. In the end, the only result was that the captain and sailors on the ship were all killed and their bodies thrown into the sea. The cargo ship was directly hijacked by the pirates. Later, these pirates became more and more rampant, and their notoriety spread far and wide. Many cargo companies were terrified and most of them avoided this route. Gong Jia was fearless. What a joke. How could the cargo ships of those cargo companies compare to his cargo ship? The cargo ship was full of arms, and the entire cargo ship was equipped with anti-aircraft guns, rocket launchers, and torpedoes. Whoever dared to stop it was courting death. As long as the cargo ship hung the flag of the hurricane group, no pirate dared to stop it. But that time something happened. That time the strong wind at sea blew the flag away. The cargo ship did not hang the flag, and the cargo ship passed through the Indian Ocean. Naturally, the pirates came to cause trouble. The two sides exchanged fire. Gong Jia killed every last one of the pirates, but due to the intense exchange of gunfire, some of the cargo ship's equipment malfunctioned, so they had no choice but to stop at an island not far away. This island was an uninhabited island in the Maldives. Gong Jia thought that the scenery here was pretty good, and thought that it would be nice to come here for a vacation in the future. Thus, he bought the island and developed it into this scenic island after a series of developments. The uncle and nephew trio basked in the sun comfortably. Gong Jia was wearing sunglasses as he enjoyed this rare moment of tranquility. Chapter 23-24. Under the sunlight, a necklace on Gong Jia's collarbone was extremely eye-catching. It shone with a mesmerizing light. You noticed the pendant. He had always seen Gong Jia wearing this pendant. It never left his body. He thought that there must be a special meaning to it. Hence, he tiptoed over to Gong Jia's recliner. Seeing that he was wearing sunglasses, he did not know if he was sleeping or awake. Hence, he secretly lifted the pendant. The round pendant seemed to be able to be opened. Yu opened it and found that the pendant was actually a mini photo frame. In the photo frame there was a round photo. There were two pictures. One was of two children snuggling together with bright smiles on their faces. Yu recognized at a glance that the children in the photo were his mother and uncle when they were young. From the looks of it, the two children in the photo were about 7 years old. However, Gong Jia was not as tall as he was now. He was even shorter than Yun Shishir when he was young. Yun Shishir hugged the 7-year-old Gong Jia and made a V sign. Her lips were red and her teeth were white. She was smiling brightly. Gong Jia, on the other hand, seemed a little shy. He leaned his head on Yun Shishir's shoulder and looked at the camera. His smile was a little shy and reserved, but his eyes were clear and bright. His black hair was soft and beautiful, falling obediently to his temples. Under his bangs, his eyebrows were gentle, and he looked like an obedient little lamb. He was wearing a snow-white shirt and a small bow tie. He looked elegant and cute. One of his small hands was hugging Yun Shishir's waist, while the other hand made a V sign. However, he did not know if it was because he was shy or for some other reason. His 2 fingers were slightly curled up and he looked shy. Yu muttered in his heart. Uncle was clearly very cute when he was young. He even looked a little like me. The miraculous thing about genes. But after he grew up, how did he grow up to be a little devil? He was black-bellied, unruly, and insufferably arrogant. In his mind, a little Gong Jia and the Devil King were standing together. One was as cute and innocent as a lamb, while the other had his hands in his pockets, wore a pair of sunglasses, and had a head full of silver hair. He looked sharp and imposing. He was like a completely different person. Yu looked at the other photo. In the photo, a young woman was sitting by a flower bed, twirling a Chinese rose in her hand. She had a gentle smile on her face. She had a face that was very similar to Yun Shishir's. She was gentle and beautiful, and her eyes were like a painting. Especially her pair of black eyebrows. They were like the clouds in the distant mountains, and her eyes were like water. Her straight black hair, without any adornment, was just like a waterfall, slanting from her shoulders and gently sticking to her back. Occasionally, a few strands would fall to her temples, but it made her look even more charming and moving. Yu sighed again. Genes were such a wonderful thing. He recognized her at a glance. This woman was probably his mommy's mommy. His grandmother. He could tell. His grandmother and his mommy were both very fond of Chinese roses. Perhaps it was also because his grandmother liked Chinese roses that his mommy had been meticulously raising a patch of Chinese roses in the back garden. Xiaoqian leaned over and took a look. His eyes widened in surprise. Is this Grandma when she was young? Yes. Yu nodded, his gaze warm. Xiaoqian said. Grandma was also a great beauty when she was young. Nonsense. Yu flicked his forehead. Otherwise, how could Mommy be so beautiful? Chapter 23-25. It was no wonder Uncle always carried this pendant with him. He must have missed Grandma a lot, right? Xiaoqian glanced at the photo of Gong Jia and Yun Shishir standing together. Looking at how shy Gong Jia was as he snuggled up in Yun Shishir's arms, he suddenly said in disdain, I didn't expect Uncle to be a little kid when he was young. It's hard to imagine how short and small he was. What did Uncle eat to be so tall? Yu also said bitterly, I want to know too. I feel like Uncle was shorter than me when he was young. Xiaoqian said, but Uncle is about the same height as Daddy now. Daddy is 189 centimeters. Gong Jia heard their discussion and opened his eyes. He took off his sunglasses and glared at them unhappily. Who said I was a little kid? I was tall when I was young. Some boys were older than me by a few years, but they weren't as tall as me. Yu raised the pendant in front of his eyes and pointed at the little kid snuggling up in Yun Shishir's arms. No matter how tall he wasn't as tall as Mommy. Gong Jia saw him pointing at the photo and glanced at it. His face suddenly turned red and he coughed awkwardly. He was inexplicably shy. Yu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Uncle, why are you so shy for no reason? Xiaoqian added. Because he got slapped in the face for bragging. He kept saying that he was tall when he was young, but in the photo, he was clearly much shorter than Mommy. Gong Jia muttered. That short one isn't me. Yu said. Huh. Xiaoqian was also shocked and stared blankly. He said noisily. If it wasn't you, then who was it? Could it be Mommy? Gong Jia's expression was a little strange. He looked away awkwardly and said helplessly. Yeah, the one with short hair is your Mommy. Yu and Xiaoqian heard this and their little mouths formed an O shape. Disbelief was written all over their faces. Yu said in a daze. Then? The one with the pigtails is you? Xiaoqian said in disbelief. Gong Jie closed his eyes and admitted reluctantly, "Yeah, it's me." Zero dash. Lying next to his uncle, Yu curiously imagined the scene. In her mind, little Gong Jie secretly took out a dress from Yun Shishir's wardrobe and put it on. He compared it in front of the mirror, then climbed onto his grandmother's dressing table and clumsily smeared lipstick on his mouth. Goosebumps rose all over Yu's body. Pervert. No wonder. No wonder he wasn't interested in women. Yu was speechless. So uncle was a transvestite when he was young. Xiao Yichen stabbed him again. Pervert. Gong Jie said innocently, "Humph, how is that possible? I've never liked to wear dresses, but at that time I had no choice." In the photo, the kid with the pigtails and the bright smile was Gong Jie. This photo was taken when he and Yun Shishir were 7 years old. At that time, Yun Shishir had always dressed him up as a girl. It wasn't a bad taste. Speaking of which, it brought back a bitter but happy memory. At that time, Mu Qingqing left the Mu family pregnant and only had a small amount of cash on her. Chapter 23-26. Her work was tough and she had to leave early and return late at night. Once, she was so exhausted that she almost had a miscarriage. She gritted her teeth and had to take several injections to prevent miscarriage. Only then did she manage to keep her 2 children. From then on, she did not dare to work too hard. Seeing that she was pitiful, the hair salon's boss reduced the intensity of his work. Perhaps he was interested in her. After all, a young and beautiful woman, who was alone, could not resist a man's lust even though she was pregnant. A few months later, Mu Qingqing gave birth to twins. In the ward, the hair salon's boss diligently served her tea and water. Later, he even held her hand and confessed to her that he wanted to marry her as his concubine. Of course, Mu Qingqing wouldn't agree. Hence, the hair salon's boss had a rush of blood and went home to divorce his wife. In the end, while she was still in confinement, the hair salon's lady boss came to her rented house and broke everything in it. She hardened her heart and left that small county with her 2 children, who were not even a month old. It was hard to imagine how tough life must be for a widow and an orphan. As she did not do a good job during her confinement, her health deteriorated rapidly. She was short of money after giving birth, so she went to work at a nightclub. With her sweet singing, she was able to feed herself. However, she was inevitably disturbed by all kinds of men when she was in a place of debauchery. There were CEOs and ordinary salarymen. Most of them were nouveau riche who had been demolished. This was nothing much, though. In those few years, Mu Shang had never given up on searching for her. In order to avoid the Mu family's eyes, she had moved from city to city. If she were to count, the number of times she had moved was no less than the number of times she had moved with both hands. For as long as he could remember, Gong Jie's deepest memory of his childhood was the life of a vagrant. Often, not long after settling down in one city, he would move to another as if he were fleeing from a disaster. His impression of his home was too vague. He vaguely remembered one time when he and Yun Shishir were woken up in the middle of the night. Mu Qingqing carried them in her arms without a care for anything else. She left everything behind and hurriedly left with only her documents and the little cash she had. At that time, they had only moved to this city for 3 months. Because they had just moved, other than a bed, there were a lot of small appliances and daily necessities in the rented apartment, which was a temporary addition. Naturally, they were not new. Mu Qingqing had brought them to the second-hand market to get them. The table lamp's current was unstable and would flicker from time to time. The black and white TV with a big belly if one did not tap on the back. At that time, Mu Qingqing lived frugally. She bought fresh vegetables from the market in the morning and gave them to the children. She, on the other hand, would go to the market in the evening. When it was about to close, she would buy the stale vegetables that the vendors didn't want. She would come back and copy them. Then, she would eat with relish what the children ate in the morning. In 3 years, Mu Qingqing had lost a lot of weight. And that night, he didn't know what had happened. As if being hunted down, Mu Qingqing carried them, abandoned everything in the rented house, boarded a long-distance bus overnight, and left in a hurry. Chapter 23-27. That was what he and a few of his close friends had saved up after selling mineral water bottles, discarded cardboard boxes, and advertising paper. He had always wanted to buy a pair of beautiful high heels for his mother when he had enough money. At that time, a pair of high heels cost 30 yuan. He had saved more than 5 yuan. At that time, this was probably all he had. The young Yun Shirshir, on the other hand, could only helplessly hug him with teary eyes. The books, pencils, and pretty dresses her mother had bought for her, even though they were bought cheaply from the market, they still looked beautiful on her. Xiao Jie circled around her and exclaimed, "Sister is like a fairy. Like a fairy." However, they had left in such a hurry that the clothes were left behind in the rented house. "Mommy, why did we run away?" the young Gongjie asked, perplexed. Mu Qingcheng only said, "Because that person came looking for us." "Is he a bad guy?" "Yes, he's a big bad guy." "What about Daddy?" The Gongjie cautiously mentioned this title. "When exactly will Daddy come looking for us?" As soon as he finished speaking, he saw that her eyes were sparkling and tears were flowing down her cheeks. Frightened, he quickly wiped them away with his small hands. From then on, he did not dare to mention this heart-wrenching name again. After that, Mu Qingcheng brought them to a very remote village to settle down. It was a remote place more than 1,000 kilometers away from the capital. Because it was a rural area, the development was backward, and even the telephone was not popularized. There was only a public telephone in a small shop, and it cost 10 cents to make a call. This village was called Lihua Village, and they farmed for a living. Every family had dozens of acres of farmland. The villagers were mostly simple and honest. Most of them were self-sufficient. If they did not have enough, they would ride a tricycle to a faraway town to buy some. Mu Sheng never found this place again. The village chief saw how pitiful Mu Qingcheng was. She was a widow and an orphan. His heart ached for her, so he rented his backyard to them at a very low rent. It was 100 yuan a month. Mu Qingcheng was overjoyed, because behind the backyard there was a large piece of land. She had always dreamed of having her own backyard. Later, she made a small garden here, surrounded by railings, and planted a large number of Chinese roses. At that time, she still had a few thousand yuan from working in the nightclub. After settling down in Pear Blossom Village, the days passed peacefully and there were no more disturbances. Mu Qingcheng used to work in a hair salon and learned a lot of skills. After she settled down, she separated a large part of the rental house and made a small hair salon. At that time, when the village women saw such a beautiful and fashionable woman coming to the village, they followed suit and came to her to have their hair cut. At that time, the hair salon was a novelty in the village, and she was the only one. Men and women, old and young, all patronized her business. Sometimes a haircut would cost 3 yuan a bag of rice or a barrel of grain and oil. As for the rice and oil, she would keep them for herself. She would ride her tricycle to the town's market to sell the excess. When business was good, he could earn a few hundred yuan a month. Their days gradually improved. Of course, this was all in the future. When they first settled down, there was nothing. Chapter 23-28. Coincidentally, the village chief also had 2 daughters and a son. He doted on her and often sent her some clothes. They were the children's leftovers, but they were definitely not tattered. However, the funny thing was that the elder of the 2 daughters was already 12 years old and the younger was 9 years old, but the son was only 5 or 6 years old. Therefore, the Gongjie could not fit into the boys' clothes, and Yun Shirshir could fit into them. As for the girls' clothes, Yun Shirshir found them too big because the sleeves were too long, but they fit the Gongjie perfectly. Mu Qingcheng also found it interesting, so she simply let Yun Shirshir wear the boys' clothes and let the Gongjie wear the girls' dress. Therefore, she cut Yun Shirshir's hair short and tied 2 cute braids for the Gongjie. Once, there was a rich family in the village whose son went to university and wanted to study abroad. In order to reward his son's academic achievements, he bought a camera and a pager. At that time, cameras were still a novelty in the village. The village chief said that he wanted to take a few photos of the 3 of them. There was one of the 3 of them standing together, and a few of them were taken separately. However, a few of the photos were later lost and only these 2 were left. Little Gongjie had been keeping it in his pocket all this time, so it was perfectly preserved. After returning to the Gong family, in order to commemorate his mother, he reduced the size of these 2 photos and embedded them in a pendant, which he always wore. This was probably the last thing he remembered about his mother. The Gongjie came back to his senses from his memories and smiled sadly. At that time we were poor, so we wore the leftovers of other children. The girls' clothes were on the bigger side. I was tall, so only I could wear them. So, oh, you said. Uncle, I've wronged you. I thought you were a transvestite. I'm not that perverted, the Gongjie said. Shaoichen agreed. That's right. Yu is the big pervert. Yu was depressed for a moment. Muichen, do you have a stand? Shaoichen chuckled. Gongjie raised his eyebrows as his gaze fell on the photo in the pendant. His lips suddenly curved into a gentle arc as his fingertips gently touched the smooth surface of the photo. He looked at Mu Qingqing in the photo with a longing gaze. His phone suddenly rang. Gongjie came back to his senses. He picked up the phone and answered the call. Hello. Little Jie. Yun Shishir's panicked voice came from the other end. Gongjie suddenly sat up from the recliner. Because of her anxious tone, he became a little nervous. Sis, what's wrong? What happened? Where are you? I'm at a resort. I have to return home immediately. What about you? Are you coming back with me or? What happened? Gongjie was a little uneasy. Yun Shishir was silent for a moment. Her breathing was slightly hurried. Something happened to my dad. He's in the hospital now. We have to rush back immediately. What? Yu and Shaoichen looked at Gongjie's unpredictable expression and looked at each other in confusion. After he put down the phone, the two little guys fought to be the first to ask, what happened? Was it mommy on the phone? Gongjie nodded and looked at them. Something happened to your grandpa. He's in the hospital now. We have to return home immediately. The two little munchkins were shocked. Something happened? He was in the hospital? What happened that was so serious? Chapter 23-29. Yun Shishir and Muyaja were taking a stroll on the beach when a hasty overseas call came in, causing her to break out in a cold sweat. Shishir, I'm your aunt. Where are you now? Yun Shishir instinctively wanted to hang up the call when she heard that it was from her aunt. She no longer had a good impression of this woman, so her reply was unavoidably cold. I'm on vacation overseas. Her aunt did not seem to mind her cold tone and sounded very anxious. It's like this. I'm calling you because your father is in the hospital. Can you rush back to the country immediately? Your uncle and I have pooled together a sum of money for the medical fees, but we really can't afford it. The hospital has been urging us, so can you come back immediately? Yun Shishir was shocked. Hospital? Is he sick? No. Her aunt seemed to have received quite a shock as well. Her voice was trembling with fear. I only found out about this after receiving a call from your uncle. As your uncle's legs are inconvenient, Qing Miao and I rushed over to send your father to the hospital. He. She laughed and even emphasized that they were the ones who sent Yun Yeqing to the hospital. Yun Shishir panicked. What exactly happened to my father? Tell me clearly. Shishir, don't panic. It's like this. Your father was splashed with concentrated sulfuric acid on his way home from a night shift. He's still in the emergency room right now. I heard from the doctor that your father has many burns on his body. It seems that he was splashed with sulfuric acid head-on, especially on his face. His life is still in danger. Yun Shishir's breathing suddenly quickened. Sulfuric acid. And concentrated sulfuric acid at that. Who was it that was so ruthless? Her father was usually kind and never made enemies, so he did not offend anyone. Who on earth was so deranged to do such a vicious thing? Muyaja knew how serious this matter was. Without another word, he booked the earliest flight. After meeting up with Gongjie, the five of them boarded the flight back to the country. As there were no direct flights to Beijing, they flew from the Maldives to Sea City and then back to Beijing. It was already 7:30 p.m. when they arrived in Beijing. It was rush hour now, so they wasted a lot of time on the way to the hospital by taxi. By the time they reached the hospital, Yun Yeqing was still in the operating theater. Yun Shishir did not care about Gongjie and Muyaja behind her. She squeezed into the elevator and went up to the floor where the operating theater was located. When she rushed over, she saw Xiangyu guarding outside the operating room while Yun Yeho was slumped on the side with a gloomy look on his face. Uncle. Shishir. When Yun Yeho saw Yun Shishir rushing back, He felt as if he had seen his savior and felt dizzy all of a sudden. Yun Shishir rushed over and glanced at the light above the operating theater. "Operation in progress," she said in a daze. "Dad hasn't come out of the operating theater yet?" Just as Yun Yeho was about to speak, Xiang Yu came up to him with tears streaming down her face. "Shishir, you're finally here. Your father is still in danger. The doctor has only come out twice and told us to be mentally prepared. He could die at any time." Yun Shishir's face changed drastically when she heard that. Chapter 23:30. Xiang Yu wanted to say something but hesitated when she heard that. Under her father's glare, she shrank to the side in grievance and kept quiet. Behind them, Mu Yaja and Gong Jia arrived with the two little lads. He walked over with a solemn expression. Seeing Yun Shishir's desolate expression, he was about to ask her something when the door to the operating theater suddenly opened. The doctor walked out and upon seeing so many people immediately asked, "Are all of you the victim's family members?" "Yes, I am." Yun Shishir went up to him anxiously. "I'm his daughter. How's my father now?" The doctor said tiredly, "It's hard to say. He's still in the emergency room. Go and settle the medical bills first before we can proceed with the surgery." Yun Shishir nodded. "Okay." Mu Yaja immediately said, "I'll go and settle the medical bills." Okay. Yun Shishir nodded again, but her eyes had become hollow. Gong Jia could not help feeling sorry for her when he saw her in a daze. He walked over and put his arm around her shoulders to comfort her. "Sis, don't worry. It's especially at times like this that you need to be calm to deal with the next problem." "Okay." Yun Shishir nodded solemnly. She had to calm down. Yun Yeho said, "Your father is still in the emergency room and is still in critical condition. What's more important now is for us to stay calm. If we lose our composure, your father will have no one to rely on." Yun Shishir was heartbroken. What exactly happened? Why did they say that he was splashed with sulfuric acid for no reason? Who did this? Who did this? Yun Yeho let out a long sigh and shook his head. "I don't know either. I don't know which D*MNB* star did this either. Splashing someone with sulfuric acid is too cruel. Too cruel. This incident happened last night. Last night, Yun Yeching was working the midday shift and only got off work at 10 p.m. As usual, Yun Yeho was waiting for him at home. However, last night until past midnight there was still no sign of him. He called several times in a row but no one answered. After waiting for a long time, Yun Yeho could no longer sit still, so he pushed himself out of the house in his wheelchair. As soon as he stepped out of the door, he heard a commotion not far away. He curiously rushed over, only to find a group of people surrounding a person lying on the ground. They were shaking their heads, sighing and calling the police. It was so crowded that not even a drop of water could trickle through. Yun Yeho was not in the mood to meddle in other people's business, but he heard someone exclaim in surprise, "Isn't this the family from room 203? I've seen him a few times. His surname is Yun. What's his name again?" His heart skipped a beat when he heard that. He immediately squeezed through the crowd and found the unconscious man lying face down in a pool of blood. No one dared to touch him. Some people said that the small bubbles around him were concentrated sulfuric acid. If they touched it, they would get burned. They had to wait for the police and ambulance to arrive. Yun Yeho's face turned as white as a sheet upon hearing that. Concentrated sulfuric acid. Trembling with fear, he took another look at the pool of blood on the ground and almost fainted from fright. Immediately he cried for help in a panic. "This is my brother. This is my brother. Help! Quick, save him." Chapter 23:31. Yun Yeho, on the other hand, was so anxious that tears rolled down his cheeks. As he was lying on the ground, no one dared to touch him. No one knew whether he was dead or alive, so he could only sit in a wheelchair and worry helplessly. In the end, when the police arrived, the hospital informed them that the ambulance had met with an accident on the way. When it rains, it pours. Yun Yeho made a call to his wife, who rushed over with Qing Miao in tow. She arranged for her men to send him to a nearby first aid station. By the time the ambulance finally arrived, he was already on the brink of death. Yun Yeho glanced at Yun Yeching. His face was badly mangled and unrecognizable due to the large area of burns. He was so frightened that he fainted once. By the time he woke up, his mother had accompanied him to the hospital. After 2 resuscitation attempts, they issued 3 notices of critical illness. Yoon Yeho was both mentally and physically exhausted from staying up the whole night in fear. His mother was not exaggerating either. Every time the doctor came out of the operating room, he had to be mentally prepared for the aftermath. Person could die at any time. 50% of the burn area in the province was mainly on the face, neck, and shoulders. His condition was still very unstable, and his life was not out of danger yet. The most serious injury was not the disfigurement but the burns on Yoon Yeching's face. Due to the inhalation of sulfuric acid, the poison had entered his blood. After all, the burned area was close to the trachea, so the chemical fumes from the burns could cause lung damage. Even though the tracheotomy had been done, he was still on a ventilator. Furthermore, his liver and kidney functions were damaged. His condition was not good. After entering the infection stage, it was all up to fate. The sulfuric acid had probably entered his mouth, but no one knew if it had burned his throat. The scary thing was that even if he managed to survive, he would still be in great pain for the rest of his life. Who did this? Yoon Shurshur stared at the operating lights with a cold expression. Who did this? Has the culprit been caught? Has he been arrested? Yoon Yeho shook his head in despair and choked out, "And no. If this happened in the neighborhood, we should be able to catch the culprit through the surveillance cameras, right?" Yoon Shurshur asked agitatedly. "Dad doesn't have any enemies. Who could do such a cruel thing? When I found him, he was already like this. Until now, there has been no news from the police station. It was said that the police brought back a few people who were at the scene to record their statements, but when they called to ask, they did not get any results. The people who were there said that when they found your father, he was already lying on the ground. There was no one else around." Gong Jie frowned. Yu and Xiaoichen looked gloomy and worried that Yoon Yeching would not make it through this critical period. Xiang Yu whispered, "The criminal must have escaped. This is intentional harm. How could someone who did such a thing stay at the scene? He must have fled long ago." Yoon Shurshur gritted her teeth and clenched her fists in anger. Damn it! Damn it! She squatted helplessly on the ground. Her heart was burning with anxiety, but she wanted to cry but had no tears. Shurshur, don't worry. Let's wait for the doctor to come out first. Now we can only wait and see the result. Chapter 2332. Xiang Yu comforted her in the same way. Yoon Shurshur remained expressionless and did not react. At this moment, she could not hear any words of comfort as her mind was completely blank. Muyaja paid the medical bills. When he returned, he saw Yoon Shurshur sitting on the long bench with a forlorn expression. Her face was dull and lifeless. Gong Jie was beside her, holding her hand tightly and hugging her shoulders. Muyaja walked over and sat down beside her. When Gong Jie saw him, he said, "Brother-in-law, stay with her. I'll send you and Xiaoichen home." "Okay," Yu suddenly said. "I want to stay with Mommy and wait for Grandpa to come out of the operating theater." Xiaoichen added, Me too. I don't want to go home. I want to be with Mommy." Xiaoichen did not have any feelings for Yoon Yeching, but when he saw his mommy in pain, he felt sorry for her and could not bear to leave. Muyaja said, "Then you two sit here and be good." Okay. Time passed by slowly, second by second. Yoon Shurshur had never felt time pass so slowly before. Every hour felt like a century of torment. At dawn, the door to the operating theater finally opened. When Yoon Shurshur heard the door opening, she jumped up from the long bench and went up to the doctor worriedly. "Doctor, how is it? Is my dad okay?" The doctor removed his mask and sighed. "His life is not in danger for now, but he hasn't passed the critical stage yet. He needs to be transferred to the intensive care unit for observation. His life could be in danger at any time." Yoon Shurshur opened her mouth and held her breath. She mumbled, "Is it that serious? I'm already very optimistic about the outcome." The doctor shook his head. "The burns are too serious. Because of the concentrated sulfuric acid, his face has been burned beyond recognition. His eyelids are gone, both sides of his nose are missing, his facial features are severely deformed, and his internal organs are damaged. We have already done our best to save him. Yun Shirshir was stunned for a long time. She bit her lips hard and endured the pain in her heart. Thank you, doctor. The surgery was open. A group of medical staff pushed the ward towards the elevator. A group of people rushed to the intensive care unit and saw a few nurses and doctors busying themselves. They could only stand outside the door and watch, not allowed to enter. Yun Shirshir finally got a good look at Yun Yeching's current state. Her eyes widened in shock as her breathing quickened. The man was lying on the bed. His face was charred black, and he was wearing a breathing tube. He was completely lifeless. Tubes were inserted all over his body. Occasionally, one could see his exposed skin covered with white ointment. One could imagine how tragic his appearance would be before the ointment was applied. Yun Shirshir did not dare to think too deeply about the mangled state of his body. When Xiangyu arrived with Yun Yeho in a wheelchair, the latter could not stop his tears from falling when he saw his father's unrecognizable appearance in the ward. God bless him. He's still alive. God bless him. Xiangyu comforted him. Don't worry, Yeho. God blesses good people. He'll be fine. Finally, he said something reasonable. Although it sounded a little pretentious. Yun Yeho only glanced at her and did not say a word. Gongjie said, Sis, you go back and rest first. I'll stay and look after him. Yun Shirshir stubbornly shook her head. No, I want to stay and look after him. Chapter 2333. Gongjie tried to persuade her. Muyaja added, If you're really worried, I'll stay here with you. Even if you're not tired, the kids are tired. If you keep holding on like this, the kids will be worried about you. Yun Shirshir glanced at Yu and Xiaoichen who were sitting at the side. She saw that they couldn't hide the heartache on their faces, so she nodded. I've already booked 2 rooms at the hotel next to the hospital. This is the room card. Gongjie passed the room card to her. Yun Shirshir took it and was still worried. If he wakes up or if there's any news, inform me immediately. Muyaja nodded and said, Okay, don't worry. I'll go to the police station later to find out more about the situation. Yun Shirshir was relieved. She held the hands of the 2 kids and walked away, looking back repeatedly. It was not until Yun Shirshir and the 2 little kids disappeared at the end of the corridor that the smile on Gongjie's face faded a little. He narrowed his eyes slightly. Suspicious, very suspicious. Huh. Muyaja glanced at him suspiciously. Gongjie said, Is there any news from the police station? Muyaja pondered for a moment. The preliminary suspicion is that it's a robbery. Robbery? Gongjie sneered. What evidence do you have? Generally speaking, it's only when there are no clues that it's a robbery. Muyaja said expressionlessly. The efficiency of the police station is low. What kind of clues can they find in such a short time? I just sent someone to take a look at the scene. When they came back, they said that the police station didn't protect the scene in time. There was a heavy rain last night, so the evidence collection might be affected. Gongjie commented coldly. What a good-for-nothing. Muyaja said. Robbery? How could it be a robbery? I've never seen a robber carrying sulfuric acid. If it wasn't for some deep hatred, he wouldn't have crippled someone to this extent. Gongjie added. We can only wait for Uncle to wake up and ask him personally. Only then can we get some clues. I'm afraid it'll be difficult. Muyaja suddenly said. Gongjie frowned in confusion. Difficult? What do you mean? Concentrated sulfuric acid splashed all over his face. According to the doctor, he inhaled a lot of sulfuric acid. I don't know if there's any hope of him being able to speak in the future. The doctor said that Yun Yeching had inhaled sulfuric acid and burned his vocal cords. There was little hope of him regaining his ability to speak in the future. How inhumane. Muyaja clenched his fists with lingering fear and said slowly, I'm worried that that person is after Shirshir. She only implicated Yun Yeching because she wanted to intimidate her. When Gongjie heard this, he could not help but feel shocked. Does elder sister have any enemies? Muyaja frowned. Yes, a lot. But in his impression, there was no one who would have the guts to do such a deranged thing after making enemies. Unless that person had a death wish. Muyaja suddenly thought of something. He stood up abruptly and said to Gongjie, Stay here and look after her. I'll make a trip to the police station. Okay. Gong Jie glanced at his watch and asked, "Is there anyone at the police station now? This matter must be investigated immediately. Someone has to come even if there's no one." With that he got up and left. Gong Jie looked at him silently and curled his lips, but his brows could not relax for a long time. He could not help but worry when he thought of Yun Shishir and the two little guys in the hotel. He picked up the satellite phone and dialed a number. Seville. Chapter 2334. Yes, young Master Gong. Send a team to guard the E-Garden Hotel next to the Jinghan Fire and Burn Hospital. Understood. After hanging up the call, Gong Jie sat quietly with his arms crossed outside the ward's door. At the police station, Wuxia had made a call before he left. After expressing his intentions, the other party immediately said that they would pass on his message to the chief. When he arrived, he only sat for a short while before the bureau chief arrived, looking travel-worn. It was only 3 o'clock in the morning. The old bureau chief was still lying on his comfortable bed at home. When he heard that a big shot was coming to the police station to investigate a case, he immediately got up from his bed and rushed to the police station in 20 minutes. When he walked in and saw Wuxia sitting in the waiting room, he secretly wiped away his cold sweat and immediately greeted him with a warm smile. "Chairman Mu, you've been waiting for a long time, haven't you?" "Hee. Chairman Mu?" "Oh." Wuxia cursed inwardly. The Mu Group's actions are really slow. They're probably not ready to make an announcement yet. Therefore, the public barely knows that I've stepped down as the Mu family's head. Forget it. Now is not the time to be calculative about this. Who knows if these snobs will still treat me so warmly after knowing that I'm no longer the Mu family's head. The chief did not know what he was thinking and respectfully invited him into his office. Wuxia did not waste time on small talk and went straight to the point. The chief was initially unaware of this case. He was busy with work and would not take on cases that were not huge. Just as Wuxia brought up the case and wanted to ask about its progress, the chief called to summon the team leader in charge of this case. The team leader had just entered the office when he was eagerly introduced by the chief. His face turned pale with fright. Initially, he thought that this might be an ordinary robbery case. He had investigated the scene before and found nothing suspicious. Moreover, the suspect had escaped, so they had lost all leads. Moreover, Yun Yeching was still in a critical condition and had yet to regain consciousness. Thus, they had to put the case aside for the time being. What he did not expect was that the family head of the victim was the rumored young CEO of the Mu family. He could not help but break out in cold sweat. Indeed, one could not judge a book by its cover. He thought that the victim was just an ordinary person. Who would have thought that he had such a big shot backing him? He found out that Yun Yeching worked in a factory and barely made a living with a salary of a few thousand yuan a month. If he was close to the Mu family, he would not have to suffer like this. Any job that the Mu family casually assigned to her would be a lucrative one. Thinking of this, the team leader broke out in cold sweat. "I'm sorry. If I knew that he was your relative, I wouldn't have neglected him." Wuxia waved his hand and asked bluntly, "You've been following this case. Do you have any leads?" "There's no suspicious clue." Chapter 2335. After a pause, he asked guiltily, "If I may ask, so Mu, is the victim awake now?" He said, "He just came out of the emergency room. He's still in critical condition." "Then," Wuxia continued, "if you want to get clues from the victim, I'm afraid it'll be a little difficult. His vocal cords are burned, and his injuries are serious. It'll be difficult for him to speak. I'm afraid we'll have to wait a little longer." This is going to be difficult." "Difficult," Wuxia said coldly. "The culprit has escaped. If we let him go, there may be a second or third victim. Shouldn't the most important thing now be to find the culprit and bring him to justice?" It sounds simple, but it's still difficult to execute. The police are not gods after all. Plus, after the incident last night, there were many obstacles in collecting evidence. The clues were cut off, and we can't find anything even if we force ourselves to investigate. Wuxia's face became colder. The bureau chief coughed heavily and glared at him. The young captain then realized that his words were too rude, and he lowered his head helplessly. "Are there no surveillance cameras in the neighborhood?" "Yes." "Then why don't you get them?" The captain said helplessly. There are surveillance cameras, but the neighborhood where the incident happened has been around for a long time. It was built in 1988 and now it's been a few decades. Many of the surveillance cameras have fallen into disrepair and are no longer functional. We also went to the property management to get the surveillance cameras. Other than the garage, the entrance, and some other important places with new cameras, the place where the incident happened to be in the blind spot of the surveillance cameras. We couldn't capture anything. The bureau chief pondered for a while, then suddenly said, "Time the victim was attacked, and get some of the surveillance footage from the entrance of the neighborhood. See if we can find any suspicious people coming in or out." The captain shook his head. "We planned to do that from the beginning. But after watching the surveillance for a few hours, we didn't see any suspicious people coming in or out." "How is that possible?" The bureau chief was shocked. "Can you get the surveillance footage of the victim coming in or out of the gate? See if there were any suspicious people following him in after he entered the neighborhood. Basically, we can confirm the suspect," the captain said. "The key is that we didn't see the victim coming in or out of the gate. Chief, there's a back door in this residential area. There's a garage at the back door. Many residents use the back door to enter and leave. The building where the victim lived was close to the back entrance, so I'm guessing that he probably entered the residential area from the back entrance. Then let's start from there and get the recording. There are no surveillance cameras at the back door." The bureau chief cursed in his heart. This criminal really knows how to pick a location. Could it be that before committing the crime, they had specially checked the neighborhood to see which places had surveillance cameras? The bureau chief furrowed his brows in frustration. Could it be that not a single witness was found? It was already very late when the incident happened. Moreover, the residential area in this area is near the industrial area. Because there are many foreigners nearby, there are very few people walking around in the middle of the night. We thought that there should at least be surveillance cameras in the garage, but when we got the footage, we couldn't capture the situation of people going in and out of the garage. Chapter 2336. The bureau chief suddenly knocked on the table and asked sternly, "Is it possible that it was a robbery?" The captain said hesitantly, "It's possible, but I've never seen or heard of such a ruthless crime. I've also never seen someone who would bring concentrated sulfuric acid to a robbery. Only those who seek revenge and cause trouble would do such a cruel thing." When the bureau chief heard this, he looked at Wuxia with a complicated expression and asked carefully, "Tomua, do you think this victim has any enemies?" The captain said, "I also suspect that it was revenge. It's just that we can't find any conclusive evidence in such a short time, so the case has been put on hold and it's hard to make any progress." Wuxia said expressionlessly, "I want to take a look at the surveillance cameras in the neighborhood." The captain immediately said, "I've copied all the intact surveillance footage into the laptop. If you want to take a look, you can take a look at it any time." The bureau chief immediately asked him to bring the laptop over. After the laptop was brought over, he pulled up dozens of surveillance footage. Wuxia sat in front of the laptop and stared at the screen intently. The timeline was pulled back from 10 p.m. to 1 p.m. when the incident happened, and the footage was fast-forwarded at x4 times. The neighborhood was indeed a little old as many residents owed property fees. Half of the property had already collapsed, leaving only an empty shell with a security booth guarding it. Over the years, there had been a problem with public security. Other than theft, there were also frequent robberies. However, most of the time the criminals came for the property. After taking the property, they would not do anything that would harm the safety of others. The surveillance cameras in the garage were still new. The property management had only installed a new one after the residents complained that their cars were being stolen one after another. Wuxia sat there and watched the video for more than 2 hours as he shuffled it back and forth. The bureau chief and captain were also patient and watched from the side. 3 pairs of eyes were hoping to find even the slightest clue in so many videos. After watching the surveillance footage, Wuxia suddenly thought of something. Are there any surveillance cameras near the apartment building? There are, but there's only one. It's a winding path that's close to the garage. He listened to the captain's analysis of the route at the scene of the incident and vaguely remembered that there was a shortcut to the apartment building. The captain also reacted abruptly. The surveillance cameras on that road didn't seem to have noticed it. Because it was a small corner, they didn't take care of it too much. Let's take a look. Wuxia ordered. The captain immediately operated it skillfully and quickly pulled up the surveillance footage of that area. She adjusted the time and fast-forwarded it at 8 times the normal speed. Finally, at 11:45 a.m., she saw Yun Yecheng's figure. That night, he was dressed in white, so he was especially eye-catching. This new set of clothes was bought for Yun Yecheng by Wuxia and Yun Shishir. Yun Yecheng especially liked it. After Yun Yecheng passed by, a suspicious figure soon appeared in his line of sight. It was a man with short hair. He was neither tall nor short. He was dressed in black and wore a beret. He was dressed very ordinarily, so it was difficult to attract attention. It was the kind of ordinary that no one would notice if they walked on the street. Chapter 2337. Dressed in black, he almost blended into the night. Coupled with the limited resolution of the surveillance camera, only his back could be seen. He followed closely behind Yun Yecheng, leaving only 3 minutes between them. Judging from his behavior, he seemed to be very cautious. He did not carry anything suspicious in his hands. Wuxia paused the image and observed for a while. He found that the man's pockets were bulging. It was probably stuffed with a bottle of concentrated sulfuric acid. The captain took a screenshot and zoomed in twice, but the image instantly blurred when he zoomed in. Not to mention the man's facial features, even his clothes were indistinguishable. The captain grumbled. "This camera is really old. The image quality is terrible." The chief said, "Look at the other surveillance cameras and see if you can find out where this person left from." Another hour had passed. The strange thing was that even after looking through all the surveillance footage, there was no trace of the man leaving. It was as if he had disappeared into thin air without a trace. If this person is really the suspect, then I have to say that he's very meticulous. After committing the crime, he probably snuck out from a small corner to arouse suspicion. There were many fences in the neighborhood that had been in disrepair for a long time. Due to the wind and rain, they had already aged. Many of the fences were broken, so an adult could leave without much effort. Look at the surveillance cameras on the streets outside the neighborhood, and then start investigating. Since we already know the suspect's basic characteristics, there should be hope of finding other clues. As soon as the chief finished speaking, the captain splashed cold water on him. This neighborhood is not far from the industrial area. Many of the roads nearby are provincial roads. Some of the roads don't even have illegal surveillance cameras, let alone security cameras. Therefore, there are often cases of robbery and theft around this neighborhood. There are dozens of cases in a year. However, because the rent is cheap, many factory workers rent here. This was going to be tricky. It was difficult to make any progress just by knowing the suspect's basic characteristics. It was impossible to draw a criminal portrait just by looking at his back. In addition, there were no eyewitnesses. If they wanted to continue investigating this case, they could only rely on the victim's words to make further inferences. Return without any results? How was that possible? Basically, they didn't find any strong clues, but they still had to exert some pressure. Wuxia exerted a lot of pressure on the bureau chief and ordered him to have a lead on the case within 10 days. Even if they did not find the culprit, they had to at least determine the scope of the investigation. How could the bureau chief dare to offend this great Buddha, who was practically omnipotent in the capital? After putting on a fawning smile and speaking nicely, he finally managed to get this great deity to leave. As soon as Wuxia stepped out of the police station, the chief's face fell instantly. His face was full of resentment and his wrinkled face was full of anger. He was so angry at Wuxia that his facial muscles were stiff from smiling the whole time. He turned around and lashed out at the captain. "Did you hear that? He gave me 10 days. If there's no progress in 10 days, you can pack up and go back to the branch. You don't have to stay here anymore." Chapter 2338. The captain, on the other hand, was young and had graduated from the police academy 5 years ago. He was considered young and promising to be able to climb to his current position. However, he was full of resentment when such a huge amount of pressure was placed on him. He thought to himself, "If every case could be solved so easily, I wouldn't be sitting in this lousy position anymore. Do you think all cases are so easy to solve? These big shots are really interesting. With just a few words they gave us a deadline, and they want us to solve the case within the stipulated deadline. Even if I were Sherlock Holmes, I wouldn't have such great ability. The bureau chief glanced at him. How could he not know what he was thinking? He said coldly, "Don't look at me. Just look at me. There's nothing on my face. Even if you see through my face, you won't be able to solve the case. Do you hear me? 10 days. Don't bother about the other cases for now. Just focus on this case. If you can't solve it, don't come and see me. Do you hear me?" Yes. When Yun Shirshir woke up, it was already 1 in the afternoon. The 2 little guys were still sleeping soundly. Yun Shirshir couldn't bear to disturb them, so she sneaked into the bathroom and called Gong Jia. On the other end, Gong Jia had just picked up the phone, but he didn't sound tired at all. "Sis, you're awake? Did you sleep for a while longer? How's Dad?" "He's still lying in the hospital ward. In the morning, his condition worsened and he was sent to the emergency room again. He's out of there now." Yun Shirshir's heart skipped a beat. She said anxiously, "Dad was sent to the emergency room again?" "Yeah." "Then why didn't you call me?" Gong Jia was silent for a moment. "I was afraid that you would be worried." Yun Shirshir took a deep breath and realized that she had lost control. She couldn't help but apologize. "Xiao Jia, I'm sorry. I was just too worried. I was afraid that, when I woke up, I wouldn't even be able to see Dad for the last time before he was gone." Gong Jia's heart skipped a beat. How could he not understand this feeling? When he was young, he had also woken up to find that his mother was no longer around. His elder sister was no longer around. His entire family seemed to have been annihilated. "I'm sorry, sister. Fortunately, he's been rescued. The doctor said that his condition has stabilized. We'll observe him for a few more days." Yun Shirshir nodded. "I'll come to the hospital right away. Where are you and Xiaoi Chen? Are you awake?" "No, she's still sleeping." Yun Shirshir pondered for a moment and suddenly said, "Why don't you bring some food to the hotel? You haven't slept for a day and a night. Why don't you rest for a while? It just so happens that you can stay in the hotel with the 2 little guys. I'll be more at ease." "All right." Half an hour later, Gong Jia entered the hotel with a lunchbox. As soon as he stepped in, Yun Shirshir saw his tired face and couldn't help but feel sorry for him. "Little Jia, you must be tired after standing guard for an entire night." "No," Gong Jia said casually, "I'm already used to it. Why don't you go home first? You don't have to stay here." Gong Jia's back stiffened for a moment. He looked back at her and suddenly walked in front of her and pulled her into his arms. "I'm not leaving." Chapter 2339. He was on vacation now. Even if he wasn't on vacation, he would still push back some of his work to stay by her side. Yun Shirshir was stunned for a moment before she smiled. "Don't you feel tired?" "No." Gong Jia shook his head and said seriously, "As long as I'm by your side, I won't feel tired." "Xiao Jia." Gong Jia stared into her eyes and said affectionately, "You know how much I wish that we could go back to how we used to be, inseparable every day. No matter how far we go, I'll always be the one by your side." Yun Shirshir's eyelashes suddenly flickered and she laughed. "You'll have your own family in the future just like me. You'll have a wife who loves you deeply and a pair of adorable children. It might be difficult to go back to how we used to be. Before that day comes, I'll still be by your side." Gong Jia's gaze softened and he suddenly said softly, "I was already by your side before we were born." That's right. They were fraternal twins. They had been together since they were born. Their mother had also told them about the circumstances of their birth. When they were born, they held hands and did not let go even after they entered the incubator. When they grew up, they were inseparable and their hearts were linked. Even if they did not say anything, they could still read each other's minds. When Xiao Jia was happy, she would also feel happy and excited from the bottom of her heart. When she was sad, Xiao Jia's mood would also be inexplicably low. He would silently stay by her side and not say anything. When they were laughing, when they were crying, their expressions were exactly the same. Their mother had once said that no matter what they did, even if it was a simple task like brushing their teeth, their movements were exactly the same. When they stood together, it was like looking into a mirror. They had perfect chemistry. I was already by your side before we were born. Yun Shishir's heart warmed when she heard this. She hugged him and said, Xiao Jia, you really make me feel safe with you by my side. He had already grown up and was no longer the stupid troublemaker he was when he was young. He had already become a reliable man. Gong Jia gave her a doting smile as he gently rubbed her head. Go on then. I'll rest for a while. If anything happens, contact me immediately. All right. Yun Shishir left the hotel room. Just as she walked out of the room, she suddenly bumped into a young man standing outside the room. He was wearing a suit and leaned against the wall. He wore glasses and looked very refined. It was obvious that he had a headset on his ear like a personal bodyguard. When he saw her walk out of the room, he immediately approached. Yun Shishir was instantly on her guard, only to see him walking closer to her and saying seriously, Miss Yun, don't be afraid. I am the bodyguard assigned by Gong Xianxing to protect you. So it was a false alarm. I'm going to the hospital. All right, I'll send you. Yun Shishir nodded her head. No need, this is Gong Xianxing's order. I'm just following orders. By the time she reached the hospital, Mu Yaja was already there. He had just left the doctor's office when he saw her. He raised his eyebrows and asked, You're awake? Yes. You didn't sleep all night? Mu Yaja said, I rested in the car for a while to recover my energy. Chapter 2340. Yun Shishir was extremely nervous as she asked a series of questions. Mu Yaja said, His life isn't in danger for the time being, but we still have to be on guard during the infection period. For the time being? Yun Shishir shuddered when she heard this. That means, his life could be in danger anytime and anywhere? Mu Yaja nodded. It depends on how well he recovers during the infection period. If he recovered well this week, he would have to undergo the 6th surgery next week to protect his eyeballs and eyelids, perform functional skin grafts on his arms and knees, and clean up the necrotic tissue. Currently, because he was in the infection period, he could not undergo intensive surgery for the time being. The doctor explained that because Yun Yeching's entire face would be burned, his eyelids would not be able to close completely. What was even more painful was that his face had already festered and was completely charred. Even if he underwent skin grafts, he would not be able to reconstruct his former appearance. His appearance would be destroyed. The most terrifying thing was the pain that would accompany him for the rest of his life. Yun Shishir was silent for a moment before she smiled faintly and said, No matter what, I must pull myself together in the future and face it together with Dad. Don't worry. It's fine as long as he's still around. Don't think too much about the rest for now. Mu Yaja hugged her and said gently, No matter what, I'm here. Okay. Yun Shishir calmed herself down and sat down on the bench. He hasn't woken up yet? He was anesthetized during the surgery. The anesthetic hasn't worn off yet, so he hasn't regained consciousness yet. Yun Shishir sighed deeply. It's good that he hasn't regained consciousness. He'll only be in pain when he wakes up. For 2 consecutive days, Yun Shishir and Gong Jia took turns guarding the hospital while Mu Yaja had to take care of the 2 little guys. In addition, there was still a long way to go after the land contract signing ceremony. Hence he entered a busy period. Even though he was busy, he would still take some time out to accompany them at the hospital. News came from the police station one after another, but in the end, there was no substantial progress. Yu did not slack off at home these few days. He hacked into the city's surveillance system and retrieved the surveillance footage of the area within a few miles of Yun Yeching's rented apartment. He stared at the footage in front of the computer every day, but he could not find anything suspicious. It was flawless. It was precisely because of this that Mu Yaja was even more certain that this wasn't an ordinary robbery. After the new year, Qin Zhou received a lot of invitations to auditions. At the same time, he also received a lot of invitations to Yun Shishir. He picked out a few scripts. When he contacted her, Yun Shishir replied that she would be taking about half a month off for the next month. It was said that his father had an accident and was now in the hospital. He was in danger of infection at any time and needed a family member to accompany him. Qin Zhou was also a reasonable person. He told the production crew and advertisers that they would delay the release of the movie. The other side also agreed. Originally, there was a charity gala this week. He wanted to bring Yoon Shurshur along with him. The so-called charity gala was the famous bazaar charity night. At the charity gala, celebrities would gather and dazzle. Other than some big shots and famous philanthropists, some billionaires would also be invited. Chapter 2341. Some of the more scheming female celebrities would dress up to the nines and beg their grandfathers to find a way to get in touch with these big shots. The more scheming ones naturally did not care about these resources. Most of them hoped to use such an event to befriend some rich and famous people. Hooking up with any of them meant that they would enjoy endless wealth for the rest of their lives. By then, what was the point of acting? What was the point of rushing for a script? It was tough being an artist, having to endure cold shoulders and unspoken rules. But it was different being a rich man's wife. They were worshipped by thousands and admired by tens of thousands. It was much more comfortable. Thus, with these ultimate goals in mind, they did everything they could to attract even more attention that night. Chin-jo naturally did not bring her along for this purpose. Yoon Shurshur did not lack resources. This charity night would be covered by a lot of media outlets. It would greatly increase the fame and exposure of the event. She did not accept any scripts this new year. The other starlets who were on the same level as her were either rushing to appear on the Spring Festival Gala program, or appearing on some talk shows or entertainment programs to increase their exposure. She did not appear in front of the public for more than half a month, so she continued to raise her fame with a posh gala. This charity night was a good opportunity. But it was a pity, such an accident happened. When Chin-jo learned of this, he and Ji-lin went to the hospital to visit. The moment they made a move, everyone in Hwanyu learned of this matter. A few of the higher-ups had a discussion. Although Muyaja was no longer the person in charge of Hwanyu, they still had to pay him a visit out of friendship. It did not matter if they did not come. That lineup could be said to be mighty. Many of Hwanyu's higher-ups brought gifts to the hospital and lined up the entire corridor. Not only that, many of the company's celebrities also came. The patients and their family members in the few wards near Yoon Yeching's were shocked and rushed out to take a look. Seeing so many famous celebrities entering and leaving the ward, only then did they know that there was a serious patient in the ward next door. This alarmed the hospital's leaders. Seeing such a big lineup, they then realized that there was a patient with an extraordinary background in the hospital. He immediately ordered for Yoon Yeching to be moved to a VIP intensive care unit with 4 nurses around the clock. At the same time, the media also took action after hearing the news. They lurked outside the door, just to be the first to get a first-hand report. Of course, this was all in the future. After being transferred to a special ward, Yoon Yeching finally regained consciousness. When she received the news, Yoon Shurshur was having dinner outside. When she heard the news, she rushed back to the hospital without eating. Inside the ward, Yoon Yeching had already regained consciousness. The nurse was carefully leaning on the bedside to wipe away his tears. Because his eyelids were unable to close, it was difficult to close his eyes. Therefore, he had to wipe away the tears that flowed out in time. Otherwise, it would easily infect the wound. She rushed to the bedside and held onto the bed frame. She looked at him and said carefully, "Dad, can you hear me?" She didn't dare to touch him. Every part of his body was horribly burned. She only dared to speak to him cautiously. Chapter 2342. Yoon Shurshur could not help but burst into tears at the sight of him in such a miserable state. However, she held it in and choked out, "Dad, don't force yourself if you can't speak. Recuperate well, I'll always be by your side," the nurse said. "Miss Yoon, your father's vocal cords might be seriously damaged. It's still unknown if he can speak in the future. Right now, he can only slowly recuperate. How much can he recover?" Yoon Shurshur quickly nodded. "Dad, you don't have to answer me. Who attacked you that night? Do you know him? Is he your enemy? Or is he a robber? If he's a robber, just move your finger slightly." Yoon Yeching's breathing quickened when he heard that. His eyes turned red and watery at once. His eyeballs suddenly trembled as he frowned with difficulty. Then he gritted his teeth slightly. With reddened eyes, he raised a trembling finger. His thoughts suddenly ran wild. The image of the baby's red and wrinkled face when it was born seemed to appear in his eyes. Only the heavens knew how strong the joy and pride he felt when he became a father for the first time was. Yoon Yeching still remembered how excited and happy he was when he held the baby girl in his arms. He excitedly carried the baby girl to Li Qin's bedside and said joyfully, "Honey, it's a girl." Li Qin sighed and muttered weakly, "Didn't the doctor reveal that it's a boy? How did you give birth to a girl?" The nurse at the side smiled and asked, "When did you find out the gender of the baby?" "When I did an ultrasound at 4 months. The doctor revealed that it's a boy," Yoon Yeching said. The nurse smiled and said, "Oh, for months. The accuracy rate isn't high. At most it's 80%. Sometimes there are mistakes. However, the girl is also very cute. The most important thing is that both mother and child are safe." Yoon Yeching nodded. "That's right. It's good that both mother and child are safe." When he learned that his wife was in labor, he rushed back from abroad to welcome the new life. Li Qin muttered to herself, "I wanted a boy. If I knew it was a girl, I wouldn't have wanted it." The nurse smiled awkwardly. This pregnant woman clearly had a preference for boys over girls. She had seen many pregnant women like this and was not surprised. "What's wrong with being a girl? I quite like girls. They look fresh and cute and obedient. When they grow up, they will be our little cotton-padded jackets and warm our hearts." He looked at the infant in the swaddling clothes and liked him no matter how he looked at him. Even though the newborn's face was red and wrinkled, making it hard to discern any facial features, the thought that this was his flesh and blood still made him dote on the baby immensely. It doesn't matter if it's a boy or a girl. What's important is that both mother and child are safe. Yoon Yeching hugged the child lovingly. "What should I name it?" Yoon Yeching replied, "A girl. Why don't we call her Yoon-na? She should be a beautiful girl when she grows up." Yoon-na. Ever since she was born, he had loved her dearly and had supported her as they grew up. When Yoon-na was young, her eyes and eyebrows were very similar to his. Especially after she entered junior high school, her facial features gradually matured, and she looked more and more like him. But how could the girl he loved and spoiled so much, with such a clear face, turn into such a hideous and twisted face? Chapter 2343. The night was bleak, and not a single star could be seen. That night, he returned home from work. After parking his car in the garage, he walked along a small path toward his apartment building. Suddenly, a familiar yet cold voice came from behind him. "Yoon Yeching." The voice was deep, calling out his name directly. Stunned, he turned around in shock, only to see a woman in a hoodie standing behind him with her hands in her pockets. In the dim night, she was expressionless. There was an indescribable coldness on her face. It was clearly such a familiar face, but it was unknown if it was because of the hideous scars on her face. In addition to that ice-cold expression, it inexplicably made one's hair stand on end. Yoon Yeching's first reaction, however, was surprise. "Nana!" He recognized the voice at once. After sizing her up for a while, he recognized her at a glance. Unusually surprised, he went up to her and excitedly pulled her into his embrace. You're still alive. You're still alive." His voice trembled due to the excessive surprise. Tears streamed down his face as he called out her name emotionally. "You're still alive. It's good that you're still alive. It's good that you're still alive. I thought you were gone like your mother." Yoon-na took a step back and said coldly, "Don't touch me." Yoon Yeching was stunned. He did not expect her to be so heartless. His eyes widened, and just as he was about to approach her, she took another step back and coldly tugged at the corner of her lips. "It's good that you're still alive? Ha ha. Aren't you very happy when I'm not around? I'm no longer your stumbling block now that I'm no longer around. What right do you have to tell me that it's good that you're still alive?" On New Year's Eve, she stood behind a tree outside the villa. Through the window, she saw Yoon Yeching beaming with joy as he hugged Yu in the living room. The snow fell on her, but her heart was colder than the layer of snow on the ground. At this thought, she suddenly gripped the sulfuric acid bottle in her pocket tightly. Her smile turned colder. Yoon Yeching did not notice her little action at all, and continued to call out her name in trepidation. "Nana!" "Shut up," Yoon-na said expressionlessly. "You have no right to call me by my name." Yoon-na. Yoon-na was dead. The one standing in front of you right now is nothing but a wandering ghost who has come to claim your life. His heart inexplicably trembled at those words that seeped into one's bones. He would never have imagined that his precious daughter who appeared before him at this moment was the incarnation of a malicious spirit who had followed him here in order to take his life. What happened to you when you were missing for a few months? I thought that your mother had taken you away from this place. When your mother's body was found some time ago, I was worried that something bad might have happened to you. But where have you been for the past few months? Where did he go? How worried. Yunyeching, are you worried? Your wife and daughter are missing, but I see that you're living a happy and carefree life. Yun-na looked as if she had heard a joke. If it wasn't for her, Li Qin would still be buried at the bottom of the sea. Not to mention her corpse, even her bones, flesh, tendons, and skin would have been eaten clean by the fishes. Worried. Chapter 2344. Yun-na clenched the bottle of sulfuric acid tightly and lowered her head. Every muscle in her body was trembling with hatred. If one did not experience it personally, one would never understand the despair of struggling in the waves. How desperate she was at that time. At this moment, she hated Yun Shishir and Yun Yeching so much. How much did she hate them? She wanted to skin them alive, pull out their tendons, and throw that be*** into the sea to feed the fishes. She wanted to see with her own eyes how desperate they were when they died. He. Yun-na's mouth cracked open and she suddenly laughed. She raised her head and stared at him with a pair of cold and bone-chilling eyes. Her laughter was so shrill that it was as if she was a malicious spirit that had climbed up from purgatory. Her voice was so cold and emotionless. It was frightening and chilling at the same time. Li Qin is already dead. Yun-na is also dead. She died in the boundless ocean. She died in the depths of despair. Yunyeching, you deserve to die too. Today, I'll make you accompany them in death. After Yun-na finished speaking, she slowly walked towards him. Yunyeching was so stunned that he forgot to dodge. He saw her take out a bottle from her pocket. It was filled with an unknown liquid. She quickly unscrewed the cap and splashed it on his face. Crash! The concentrated sulfuric acid splashed on his face and instantly burned and corroded his intact skin. Before he could react, he felt a heart-wrenching pain. He clutched his face and staggered to the ground, struggling to get up. When Yun-na saw his struggling appearance, her smile suddenly became even more complacent. She casually poured the concentrated sulfuric acid on his body, as she wantonly enjoyed the sight of him constantly twitching and struggling. Her face was filled with excitement and a sinister smile. Yunyeching, you deserve this. The strong corrosive force instantly burned his skin until it was full of holes. Yun-na poured all the liquid in the bottle into his mouth and threw the bottle at him expressionlessly. There was no need to worry about leaving any traces on the surface of the bottle. Before this, she had already cut off her fingertips with a knife, so there would not be any fingerprints left behind. Yun-na watched expressionlessly as Yunyeching struggled in pain and howled at the top of his lungs. She then turned around and slowly left the scene. There was no trace of fear or guilt in his heart. She was calm and composed, as if she was taking a stroll in the back garden, and left just like that. When he woke up and regained consciousness, he knew that he had been sent to the hospital. The doctor walked in and gave him a lot of instructions. He also introduced his injuries. He had barely managed to save his life, but the rest of his life would be accompanied by pain. In the short time he was lying on the bed, he quickly recalled what had happened. When he thought of Yun-na's savage and resolute face, he couldn't help but tremble. Dad! Yun Shishir looked at him worriedly when she saw that he had stopped moving. Yunyeching's eyes darted around, and he glanced at Yun Shishir. Then he recalled Yun-na's deranged face. After some hesitation, he finally sighed. He choked back his tears and shook his finger laboriously. If he could speak now, he would tell her without hesitation that he had been attacked by an anti-society thug on his way home. Chapter 2345. He was unable to speak, much less nod or shake his head. All he could do was bend his finger slightly as a nod. Yun Shishir wanted to ask more, but the nurse beside her reminded her that the patient needed rest and should not ask too much. She could only drop the subject. It was not that she did not have any doubts. Robbery. Robbers. The crime scene did not look like it. It clearly looked like someone was out for revenge. However, since Yun Yeching said so, she could not pursue the matter further. She could only wait for him to recover a little before discussing the rest. Over the next few days, Yun Yeching's condition gradually stabilized. With 4 to 5 nurses taking turns to look after him, she took the time to make a trip back to Huanyu. Unexpectedly, she bumped into someone she did not want to see at the company. Yun Shishir. Lu Jingtian had just walked out of Ji Lin's office when she spotted Yun Shishir, who was looking for Ji Lin. She was stunned for a moment before breaking into a smile. Long time no see. Yun Shishir, you've been so proud of yourself while I was away from Huanyu. Yun Shishir smiled indifferently. What are you trying to say? Oh, nothing much. After not seeing her for so long, Lu Jingtian was still as arrogant as before. However, her attitude toward her was no longer as aggressive as before. Her gaze was still cold, though. I've just returned from overseas. Director Ji summoned me and said that he wants to arrange the work for me. Some time ago, she had gone to America to avoid the limelight because of her scandal. While she was there, she also had plastic surgery. After a few months, she recovered well and looked prettier than before. She even had the looks of a celebrity. Although Lu Jingtian's looks were not bad in the past, she was still lacking compared to those leading and A-list actresses. She had gone overseas this time to avoid being noticed and to take advantage of this time to have her surgery. Yun Shishir did not want to bother with her and walked toward the director's office. As the two brushed past each other, Lu Jingtian suddenly mocked. I heard that Brother Mu has stepped down from his position as the head of the Mu family. It's better for you to keep a low profile in the entertainment industry from now on. Now that we don't have the Mu family to rely on, if we continue to be as arrogant as before, we'll die a horrible death. Huanyu was an entertainment company under the Mu group. Now that Mu Yaja was no longer the head of the Mu family, he was no longer the master behind Huanyu. Without the Muse as her backing, she was naturally no longer afraid of her. Yun Shishir sneered. Oh, you too? She asked in surprise. What do you mean? Yun Shishir said casually. Even if I don't have a big tree to rely on, you won't be my opponent. Lu Jingtian ignored her and taunted. Hee hee. You know what? I just accepted a role as the female lead in a movie. Seeing that she was being ignored, Lu Jingtian smugly said. I fought for this position with my own strength. Do you think I'm like you? What else can I rely on to get to the top other than using underhanded means like the unspoken rules? Yun Shishir smiled expressionlessly. Which director was blind to pick you as the female lead? You? Lu Jingtian was so angry at her sharp questioning that she almost jumped up. Chapter 2346. She paused for a moment and smiled lightly, but every word she said was like a gem. Do you feel out of character when you're acting? You. Lu Jingtian was furious. After glaring at her for a while, she suddenly burst into laughter. Yun Shishir, let's wait and see. Do you think you can still be as smug as before? Hee hee. With that, she lifted her head and left in her 8-centimeter high heels. Yun Shishir stood at the door and knocked on it. Ji Lin's cold voice was heard. Who is it? Director Ji, it's me. Come in. Yun Shishir pushed the door open and walked in. Seeing her, Ji Lin looked up and asked quizzically, Aren't you taking care of your father at the hospital? Why are you here? Director Ji. Thank you for taking care of my father. But, Yun Shishir paused and took out a check wrapped in an envelope from her bag. It was given to her by Ji Lin and Qin Zhou when they went to the hospital. It was a 6-figure sum. I can't accept this money. Ji Lin glanced at her before his gaze landed on the envelope. His lips curled up. What's this for? I appreciate the director's concern, but I can't accept such a large sum of money. With that, she handed the envelope over with both hands and smiled. Thank you. Ji Lin did not reach out to take it though. Take it? Question mark. This is a small token from Qin Zhou and me. A small token? Yun Shishir could not help but be speechless. She had never seen anyone take out so much money just to visit a patient at the hospital. This was a little too exaggerated. Ji Lin said. Don't be fooled by how much money it is. A portion of it is the final payment from the commercial you shot. It's what you deserve. The final payment from the commercial? Didn't you shoot a shampoo commercial before? Yes. Jilin said concisely. This is the final payment. Did the advertiser not fork out a few million yuan at that time? Where did the final payment come from? Yun Shishir was skeptical. You came looking for me because of this? Yes. Jilin suddenly put down his work, looked up and asked seriously. How is your father's injury? He's still under observation. He's slowly recovering. The last time I took a look, the injuries were very serious. His face is completely disfigured. Yun Shishir pursed her lips and nodded. Jilin asked worriedly. Is there any news from the police station? Have you caught the criminal? She shook her head. There's no news yet. The police said that because the criminal didn't leave any evidence and it was already very late at the time of the incident, they couldn't find any witnesses, so it's very difficult to investigate. That's a lot trickier. Jilin suddenly probed. Could it be that your father offended someone with a strong background? No matter how I look at it, it seems like they're here for revenge. Otherwise, they wouldn't be so ruthless. That's what I suspected as well, but father didn't say much about it. He only said that it was a robbery. When can you come back to work? Probably next month. When my father's condition stabilizes, I'll be free. When she left Jilin's office, Yun Shishir pondered over his words. No matter how she looked at it, it seemed like they were here for revenge. Otherwise, they wouldn't be so ruthless. Revenge? Chapter 2347. For a moment, she could not make sense of this matter. However, her eyelids kept twitching, and she had a feeling that this matter was not as simple as it seemed. Yun Shishir fell into a state of confusion. She bade farewell to Jilin and left Huan Yu in a hurry. After she hurriedly got into the car and left, Lu Jingtian sat in the car expressionlessly and snorted. What a B***TC. Her manager hurriedly said. Tian, don't waste any more time. You still have to pick out a gown with Miss Enya this afternoon. Okay. I got it, don't rush me. She then looked at the driver's seat and ordered. Let's go. Bazaar's annual charity gala was in a few days' time. She had finally obtained an entry ticket, so naturally, she had to dress up grandly. For this opportunity, she had paid a hefty price. She only hoped that she could make friends with some well-known directors and producers at this charity gala. She was not one of those short-sighted artists who would sell themselves in one go and find a sugar daddy to discuss marriage. When it came to acting, she had stepped into this industry because of her passion for acting. Aside from her passion, however, she also had a desire for fame and fortune. Was it purely for wealth? She came from a well-to-do family, so she had resources and people to support her. So what if that incident happened? Once she returned to the country, she could still get people to groom her for the female lead. Although it was not a blockbuster, it was already good enough for her to get the female lead role. She had a good background, so she did not have to climb up through unspoken rules like those female stars who had no resources. Still, although she came from a well-to-do family, it could not satisfy her ambition. There was a saying, man strives for higher places, just as water flows to the bottom. Once one got involved in things like glory and wealth, one's ambition would be uncontrollable. In order to be worthy of a better partner, she naturally had to become more outstanding. This was her goal. Therefore, she urgently needed fame to stabilize her position. As for her dark history, once she conquered the audience with her acting skills, what else could she not clear? In the afternoon, she went to a fashion store with Song Enya to pick out a gown as promised. Naturally, she had to dress up to attend the charity gala. Unlike Lu Jingtian, Song Enya was invited to attend the charity event. Lu Jingtian had met Song Enya a few times after returning to the country, but she was unaware of some of the things that had happened to the latter recently. Naturally, this included Song Enya's pregnancy. She only knew that Song Enya had disappeared for a while some time ago. It was said that she had gone to America, and there was no news of her since. After returning to the country, she had changed completely. It was a change in temperament. Song Enya used to be arrogant and carefree, but now she was more reserved than before. The two chatted as they picked out their gowns. Just as Lu Jingtian excitedly asked her if a particular gown would match her aura, the Missy suddenly retched. She hurriedly covered her mouth and rushed to the washroom. Startled, Lu Jingtian followed her to the washroom, only to see her leaning over the counter and retching violently. She could not help but frown in surprise at the heart-wrenching retching. Chapter 2348. Song Enya, who had been lying motionless in front of the table, slowly straightened up and looked at her pale face in the mirror in confusion. She then looked at Lu Jingtian's bewildered face and smiled awkwardly. "It's nothing." As soon as she said that, there was another reaction. She covered her mouth and retched for a while, looking extremely painful. Lu Jingtian's heart skipped a beat when she saw this. She raised a brow and could not help laughing dryly. "If it weren't for the fact that you don't have a boyfriend, I'd really suspect that you're pregnant." "No." Song Enya denied it with a look of embarrassment. However, such a strong reaction was undoubtedly a bit of an attempt to cover it up. Lu Jingtian became even more suspicious. "Enya, you don't have to be so serious. Can't you tell that I'm joking?" Song Enya's face turned pale for a while before she tugged at the corners of her lips. "This joke isn't funny at all." With that, she turned around and was about to leave. Lu Jingtian suddenly grabbed her wrist nervously and asked sensitively, "Enya, don't tell me. You're really pregnant?" She was not stupid. How could she not tell that such a strong reaction was a typical pregnancy reaction? She had only suspected it at first, but Song Enya's vehement denial only confirmed her guess. She had noticed earlier that the packaging in Song Enya's bag was specially made for pregnant women, and had the least amount of lead and mercury. A look of panic flashed across Song Enya's face. She took a deep breath and closed her eyes in pain as she slowly said, "Jingtian, I really don't know what to do." After saying that, she squatted on the ground desolately, buried her face in her arms and started sobbing silently. Lu Jingtian walked over worriedly and gently patted her on the shoulder when she saw the latter shrug. "What exactly happened?" I'm pregnant." Song Enya's voice was very soft, as if she was ashamed. With just one sentence, her face turned red as if it was on fire. Lu Jingtian was stunned for a moment. She opened her mouth and was stunned for a moment before she asked, "Whose child is it?" "Mu? Mu." The moment Song Enya said the surname, Lu Jingtian could not help but shudder. Could it be Brother Mu? Mu Yanqing. Song Enya's eyes reddened helplessly. The child is his. How can this be? Lu Jingtian could not help feeling flustered. Mu Yanqing. This? How could this be? They were completely different people. Lu Jingtian and Mu Yanqing were acquainted with each other. Sometimes they would meet for a drink at a bar. She would even bring along a number of good-looking playmates from her circle. Mu Yanqing was also a playboy, but Lu Jingtian knew that he had a long-term girlfriend who was a young model. No matter how hard he changed women around him, this young model was the only one who would never leave his side. They seemed to have been together for 3 years. 3 years. For such a dissolute man, it was already not simple. Lu Jingtian had always been curious about what that young model looked like to be able to keep such a man by her side for so long. She had suggested several times for Mu Yanqing to bring her out to have some fun, but the latter was so protective of her that he refused to do so no matter what. To Lu Jingtian, he was more like a big brother. Chapter 2349. Although he was a playboy, he was very principled. He would never touch a woman he should not. Still, how did he end up with Song Enya? Lu Jingtian was perplexed. What exactly happened? Under Lu Jingtian's relentless questioning, Song Enya finally revealed the truth about what had happened that night. That day, I bumped into Brother Yanqing at a bar. I saw him sitting alone in a corner, drowning his sorrows in alcohol. Feeling depressed, I walked over to take a look at him. Initially, I wanted to have a drink with him, but after just 1 glass of alcohol, he was already dead drunk. Hence, I suggested sending him home. He refused to go home though. I didn't know his address, so I naturally didn't dare to be rash. Thus, I thought of sending him to a hotel out of kindness. Lu Jingtian became nervous at once. And then I helped him to the hotel room, and he carried me up in his arms. Then he. At the mention of the painful part, Song Enya cried aggrievedly. I shouted no. But perhaps because he was drunk, he didn't listen to me at all. You know how a woman's strength can compete with a man's too. On the big bed in the hotel he took me. She wept bitterly. Lu Jingtian was speechless. He forced himself on you? Song Enya looked helpless. I said no. But he didn't listen to my pleas at all. That was my first time. Lu Jingtian was furious when she heard this. What did he say after that? Song Inya shook her head. After that, it was left unsettled. After he sobered up, he apologized and repented. He said that he was drunk and that it was an unintentional mistake. What an unintentional mistake. A girl's chastity was ruined by him just like that. Lu Jingtian was also hurt by her words. Those dark memories came back to her as well. She clenched her fists tightly and said indignantly, "Men are all bastards." She then pressed, "What happened after that? Did you take the pill?" Take the pill? Oh yes. The morning after pill. The morning after pill is effective for 72 hours. Yoon Shirshir shook her head in astonishment. No. After I went back, my mind was in a mess and I forgot about it. Then, have you tested it before? Song Inya lowered her gaze as she bit her lower lip and nodded. Lu Jingtian hurriedly asked, "What are the results of the test?" 2 red lines, it's probably. There it is. Lu Jingtian furrowed her brows. Song Inya suddenly took out a box from her handbag. The box contained a pregnancy test kit. She took out a test kit from the box and showed it to her. She took it and was shocked. "You're really pregnant." "I don't know if this is accurate." Song Inya stared at him blankly. Lu Jingtian replied, "Just because the pregnancy test failed doesn't mean that she's not pregnant, but once it does, she's definitely pregnant." With that, she gritted her teeth angrily. Mu Yanqing, that be asterisk starred. I thought he always knew when to stop. The two of them had been in a relationship for so many years. Although they were not as close as sisters at this moment, perhaps because Lu Jingtian was reminded of some unbearable past, she resonated and was filled with righteous indignation. "Jingtian, what should I do?" Chapter 2350. What else can we do? She yelled. He must take responsibility for what he's done. Shoo. Song Inya hurriedly covered her mouth. Keep your voice down. Inya, this isn't something to be ashamed of. You're innocent and a victim. What's there to hide? It's best if you make a big deal out of it and let everyone know about it. Let that jerk step forward and take responsibility for you. But I don't dare. Song Inya flinched. Lu Jingtian snorted. What's there to be afraid of? Just you wait. Isn't Mu Yanqing going to attend the charity event? When the time comes, I'll help you tell him that you don't have to feel ashamed. The one who should feel ashamed is him. Song Inya was touched. Jingtian, thank you. Thank you so much. You've done so much for me. Lu Jingtian laughed coyly. We're good friends after all. Don't worry. Although Mu Yanqing did such a thing, he won't deny you if you're pregnant. Okay. All right. There's no point in thinking so much now. Come and pick out an outfit for me. Okay. Lu Jingtian turned around. Behind her, the helplessness on Song Inya's face suddenly faded and was replaced by a smug smile. After picking out the gown and walking out, Lu Jingtian suggested shopping at a nearby mall to buy a bag. But Song Inya declined, saying that she was not feeling well and wanted to go home to rest. Since it was boring to be alone, Lu Jingtian was no longer in the mood to shop, so she waved her goodbye at the entrance. Song Inya took a taxi home directly, while Lu Jingtian's car was parked in the parking lot. It was already late at night by now. She walked toward the parking lot in her high heels. The wind was a little stronger at night, so she quickened her pace. Suddenly, she heard footsteps behind her. The path to the parking lot was sparsely populated, and the dim streetlights elongated people's shadows. She initially thought that she was hallucinating, so she slowed down her pace. However, the person behind her slowed down as well. The two kept a distance of several meters, one in front and one behind. Lu Jingtian, however, could not help feeling a little wary. She stopped in her tracks and glanced behind her. Out of the corner of her eye, she vaguely caught a glimpse of a strange shadow behind her. She abruptly turned her head to look, only to see a person dressed in black standing behind her. The man was wearing a hooded sweater. Due to the hooded hood, his face was hidden in the darkness, so she could not see his face clearly. However, when their eyes met, she was startled to find a pair of murderous eyes fixed on her. Seeing that she had stopped, the black-clothed man did not hesitate much. After a while, he lifted his feet and quickly walked towards her. Lu Jingtian caught sight of the dagger in the man's hand at once. Under the streetlight, the gleam of the dagger gave her a fright. Ah! Lu Jingtian's face turned pale with fright. Letting out a shriek, she turned around and ran toward the car. The black-clothed man behind her quickly chased after her. Lu Jingtian became timid and worried that it was a robber. She ran for her life until she saw her white car. Like a person drifting in the sea seeing a piece of driftwood, she rushed over with her hair disheveled and frantically banged on the car window. "Open the door! Open the door!" A series of screams alarmed the driver. Chapter 2351. The chauffeur hurriedly unlocked the car. She opened the door, jumped in and closed it. She was not completely scared out of her wits and even knew to lock the door from the inside. After getting in, she felt a sense of security. She leaned against the car window and looked out, but she did not see that suspicious person again. Still, she could not be completely at ease as she shouted, "Drive! Drive!" "Miss Jingtian, what's wrong?" She panicked. Someone is chasing after me. He's giving off a murderous aura." The chauffeur was a little surprised. He looked in the direction she was running from but did not see anyone suspicious. "Drive quickly. Hurry." She was scared out of her wits as she waved her hands and gave orders. The chauffeur muttered inwardly, "What's this missy up to again?" Still, he did not dare to neglect her orders. He immediately started the car and slowly drove out of the parking lot. Not far away, a man in black stood out from behind a tree. He looked expressionlessly in the direction the car had left in before coldly turning to leave. Lu Jingtian's sharp eyes caught sight of his figure in the rearview mirror. She turned around abruptly, but he was no longer there. Could it be that her eyes were playing tricks on her? She was too paranoid. The chauffeur said, "It was a false alarm. I didn't see anyone suspicious on the way here." Oh. She sucked in a deep breath of cold air. However, when she turned around, she could clearly feel that person's murderous aura. "Miss Jingtian, do you want me to send you home now?" "Yes. Let's go back." Lu Jingtian still had lingering fears even after she reached home. When she stepped into the dark room, she jumped in fright and quickly turned on the lights. Only when the room was brighter did she feel slightly more at ease. She thought back to the person who had deliberately followed her. He gave off an inexplicable sense of familiarity and was not a stranger. It was déjà vu. However, no matter how hard she tried, she could not recall anything. Forget it. Don't let your imagination run wild. I must take care to rest well these few days, lest it affects my complexion. I won't be beautiful on the day of the charity banquet. Lu Jingtian went to bed early. 5 days later, the charity banquet arrived as scheduled. That night, the bazaar charity banquet was held at 8 o'clock in the evening. The stars on the red carpet. There were many celebrities and famous entrepreneurs in the charity industry invited to the charity banquet. Most of the entrepreneurs who attended the charity banquet had a tacit understanding of their motives. To hunt for beauties. For food. Who was genuinely here for charity? For charity. How many peoples of their hearts? The ulterior motive was not in the wine. These entrepreneurs were shrewd. At the banquet, there would be some famous people's calligraphy and paintings, or private collections, and the proceeds from the auction would all be used for public welfare. There were plenty of connections as twos, of course. At the climax of the party, there would also be a charity donation. Of course to the rich, and of that to the rich, to of the rich to make. To of course to. Twos. Of course ss of them of course. Of and that was of to the of course. Chapter 2352. If they donated a lot, they could even be worshipped by the public, which was very respectable. With their status, they no longer cared about money and only wanted to be in the limelight. Mu Yanqing was here. Lu Jingtian and Song Enya entered the venue, and immediately spotted the man who was surrounded by a host of admirers. Lu Jingtian was about to walk over when she saw him walking in another direction with 2 glasses of wine in his hands. He stopped in front of a woman. Lin Shuya. Lu Jingtian was taken aback. Since when did Mu Yanqing and Lin Shuya get so close? Song Enya bit her lower lip and muttered, "I heard that the Muse have arranged a marriage for him. The other party is Lin Shuya." the daughter of the Lin family. The two have met, and they're probably getting to know each other better now. Lu Jingtian was indignant. That's too much. He did that to you. Doesn't he intend to give you an explanation? Ha! Compared to the Lin family's daughter, I naturally don't have enough weight. If he can get a marriage alliance with the Lin family, his status in the Muse will also rise with the support of such power. Be ****. Lu Jingtian scolded again. Forget it. Song Enya was obviously going to give up. Anyway, he has no intention of taking responsibility. Why don't we just abort the child and cut off all ties? How can we do that? Lu Jingtian disagreed. Enya, don't you know how cruel an abortion is to a woman? You haven't even taken the first step.